The monotonous beep of a heart monitor fills the room as a sickly girl recalls the doctor's grim prediction that she wouldn't survive past her 3rd birthday. Flashbacks reveal a lifetime of cruel limits, from being told she wouldn't see age 7 to being denied the simple right to attend school at 8. Now 16 and confined to her bed, she listens to the heart-wrenching prognosis that her parents will likely never see her get married. She accepts that modern medicine has failed her, acknowledging with resignation that she has cheated death time and again only to remain a prisoner. Outside her window, the sound of healthy children laughing and playing highlights the unfair divide between their vibrant lives and her silent suffering. Despair overtakes her as she reaches a trembling hand toward the light, crying out for the life slipping through her fingers. Her soul screams with the singular wish to walk outside on her own feet just once before the end. She fantasizes about the simple joys of playing with friends, going to school, and finally making her parents happy. Her thoughts drift into a final, fragmented plea for something more than this fragile existence. As she wishes for a healthy body, the monitor flatlines into a continuous tone and her vision fades into white. A mysterious voice echoes through the void, declaring that her dying wish shall be granted. She wakes in a white expanse facing a bearded deity and calmly explains that she trained her heart not to stop from surprise. The deity is baffled by her lack of shock until she reveals she had to control her heart rate just to survive her daily life. Deducing that this is heaven, she correctly identifies the bearded figure as God, who confirms he oversees her world. God reveals he summoned her before her soul vanished to propose a unique opportunity for reincarnation. He describes the destination as a medieval world of swords, sorcery, and monsters with primitive technology. Before he can finish his warning about the dangers, she excitedly interrupts and demands to be sent there immediately. Her face beams with a fearless determination that completely overshadows any concern for the perils of a fantasy world. She scolds God for his lengthy explanation when he already promised the one thing she wanted, prompting him to call her hasty. God insists on clarifying that she will be reborn as a healthy and eminent child, guaranteeing the vitality she craves. She accepts the offer instantly, shocking the deity with her absolute lack of hesitation or doubt. A fierce light burns in her eyes as she steels herself to leave her sickly past behind forever. Sick of living by expiration dates and prophecies, she vows to forge her own destiny with this new ticket to life. She reiterates with absolute conviction that a healthy body is the only requirement she needs to be happy. Impressed by her resilience compared to other souls, God smiles and begins the rite of reincarnation. A pillar of light engulfs her as God raises his arms to send her soul across the boundaries of worlds. God explains that her current memories will be sealed until she turns 6 to ensure her mind and body grow naturally. As she fades away, God whispers that she will be a villainess, a title she finds strangely powerful. God chuckles to himself as the transfer completes, wishing the new villainess Elizabeth a safe journey. He lingers in the white void, commenting on the young girl's remarkably strong spirit. In a luxurious bedroom, a young girl with purple hair snaps her eyes open and wakes up with a start. She sits up abruptly and is stunned to find her heart steady and her breath calm despite the sudden movement. Overcome with excitement, she swings her legs out and jumps down from the high bed with a solid thud. Her face flushes with the thrill of physical exertion that doesn't result in immediate collapse. She realizes with awe that this simple jump is the first time in her 22 years of existence that she has moved so freely. Cupping her cheeks, she trembles with the overwhelming reality of finally possessing a functional, healthy body. She rushes to the window to bathe in the sunlight, offering a heartfelt prayer of gratitude to God. The perspective zooms out to space, revealing the swirling galaxy of the new world she now inhabits. Back in the divine realm, the sound of soft footsteps approaches the spot where the deity stands. A casual voice calls out to God, interrupting his moment of solitary reflection. The divine messenger Luna approaches God's throne, asking how the reincarnated girl in her charge is faring. Luna asks if the deity feels guilty about burdening a clueless girl with such a cruel fate, but God merely strokes his beard and asks if she is having misgivings. The cat reminds him that the girl's role is to be a villainess, and not just a minor bully who torments the heroine. She explains that the girl is destined to become the all-powerful final boss who will awaken as the demon lord and destroy the world. Luna emphasizes that this child of man possesses ultimate-tier dark magic that is darker than the darkest of nights. God laughs at how sweet it was that the girl asked no questions, while Luna marvels that they found someone foolish enough to inhabit such a body. Curious to see her current state, God suggests they check on her while Luna activates a viewing spell. Luna predicts the girl is screaming in agony, tormented by the miasma, wraiths, and reapers summoned by her dark magic. She gleefully asserts the girl will give up on life and become a demon lord, though she claims to pity the poor soul. As the viewing portal opens, Luna wonders just how anguished the tragic Villainess looks at this very moment. To her shock, the girl is beaming with a radiant, joyful smile. Luna freezes as she hears the girl counting out rhythmically, taking deep breaths for her morning exercise. The young Elizabeth stretches her arms wide by the window, exhaling happily as the morning light bathes her. She marvels at how refreshing the air feels, completely at peace with her new existence. Luna screams in confusion, demanding to know what is going on as Elizabeth transitions to her second radio exercise. The cat insists that the villainous Elizabeth Maxwell should be surrounded by gloom and miasma at all times. Watching Elizabeth bend and stretch in a pristine room, Luna frantically wonders if she tuned into the wrong channel. Desperate for answers, Luna brings up the status screen to verify the girl's identity. The screen confirms she is indeed Elizabeth Maxwell, age 6, and already a level 13 villainess. Still in disbelief, Luna activates the magic sensor to double-check the readings. The sensor confirms her magic attribute is dark, with an absurd darkness rating of over 99%. Luna trembles, noting that such power is darker than the darkest night and impossible for an average human to possess. The status screen slams back into focus, re-emphasizing her impossible level. Luna panics, realizing that a 6-year-old having the strength of an adult soldier is completely illogical. Suddenly, a massive skeletal face materializes behind the girl, signaling impending doom. Luna screams as she identifies the monster as a level 27 Reaper looming over the unsuspecting child. The cat watches in horror, realizing the Reaper is being drawn to the girl's immense darkness. The Reaper attacks, but its skull suddenly distorts as it is struck by a powerful, unseen force. Elizabeth shatters the monster's skull with a casual punch, seamlessly incorporating the strike into her exercise routine. A system chime rings out as she defeats the enemy without breaking her flow. A horde of Reapers swarms her, but she obliterates them with her energetic movements. She swings her arms and twists her body, unknowingly unleashing waves of force that tear the monsters apart. Her simple stretches release shockwaves that decimate the army of skeletons surrounding her. Oblivious to the carnage, Elizabeth finishes her routine with a refreshed yawn and a happy melody. She continues to hum a tune, feeling completely relaxed and invigorated. As she jumps up with a cute squeak, the remaining skeletons are blown away by the sheer force of her movement. Luna realizes Elizabeth has consolidated her magic to use as a weapon, but is stunned that the girl is completely unaware of it. While Elizabeth marvels at how fresh the air is, Luna notes that the girl cannot even see the Reapers she is destroying. Luna explains in disbelief that Elizabeth didn't notice using her magic or the fact that she just repelled a horde of Reapers. God interrupts, explaining that Elizabeth is a veteran who has been fighting Reapers since the moment she was born. He reveals that in her previous life, she was always fighting for survival, whether awake or asleep, without any magic to help her. He adds that her sickly body was the worst possible handicap, yet she persisted against those odds. God declares that for someone who lived on hell difficulty, facing bad endings or destiny in this world is basically easy mode. Elizabeth basks in the simple joy of her new life, grateful just to be healthy and moving freely. Celebrating her healthy body, she revels in the achievement of her first 2 goals within an hour of awakening. Determination fills her stride as she marches toward the heavy double doors to fulfill her next ambition of going outside. She reaches up to turn the handle, but her excitement hits a wall when the latch refuses to budge. Undeterred by the locked door, she immediately pivots her plan toward the large window across the room. Her optimism falters slightly as she peers through the glass and discovers formidable iron bars blocking her escape. She recalls her grandmother's warnings about tying up bad children, but realizing these iron bars are far more extreme. It dawns on her that being a villainess places her in a category far beyond a simple naughty child, justifying the prison-like security. Staring down the obstacle, she refuses to let a few metal rods dictate the terms of her new life. She steels her resolve, deciding that the word restraint has no place in her vocabulary right now. With a defiant glare, she swears to challenge this restrictive fate and break free from her confinement. Taking a deep, centering breath, she prepares to exert herself in a way she never could before. In the hallway, the The rattle of a serving cart signals the approach of someone attending to the secluded room. A young maid in training named Chloe pushes the cart, lamenting yet another gloomy day in her service. Chloe reflects that her employer is the daughter of Marquis Maxwell, a position that usually carries prestige but currently brings dread. She thinks of Lady Elizabeth, who turns 6 today, noting that the girl is the exact same age as her own younger sister. Chloe recalls the unsettling nature of the girl, who sits in perpetual darkness, never moving, speaking, or smiling. Steeling herself, Chloe knocks on the door and enters, muttering that a child this age should be full of energy. The maid freezes in the doorway, stunned to find her supposedly motionless charge climbing the high window bars. Unaware of the intruder, Elizabeth grunts with effort, frustrated that her small hands cannot reach the window latch. A noise betrays Chloe's presence, causing Elizabeth to whip her head around and lock eyes with the stunned maid. Time seems to stop as the reincarnated noblewoman and the terrified servants stare at each other in bewildered silence. Chloe screams in terror, shrieking that the lady is being far too energetic for someone who never moves. Startled by the sudden command to get down, Elizabeth slips and falls from the window frame. A terrifying pillar of black darkness erupts from the floor, engulfing the falling girl in a protective swirl. The dark energy rages violently, acting as a magical cushion to break her fall. Elizabeth lands softly on her bare feet, completely unharmed, while the maid watches in sheer disbelief. Chloe's soul practically leaves her body from shock, leaving Elizabeth confused by the maid's dramatic fainting spell. Elizabeth shakes the unconscious maid, frantically trying to wake Miss Minimaid from her sudden collapse. The narrative shifts to the ominous reputation of Elizabeth's eyes, which are traditionally seen as a bad omen. Superstition holds that her black hair and eyes are cursed because they mirror the appearance of the legendary demon lord. This dark coloring stands in stark contrast to the Maxwell family's blonde hair and blue eyes, marking her as an outcast. Her physical difference is the root cause of her total isolation from her family and the rest of the world. Chloe remembers how the girl's inability to smile always cast a heavy, depressing atmosphere over the room. The maid admits that just looking at the silent, gloomy child was enough to bring her own spirits down. Chloe prays to God, acknowledging that while Elizabeth is not her own little sister, she still cares for her deeply. Her heartfelt wish is simply to see Lady Elizabeth become cheerful and show a genuine smile one day. Back in the present, Chloe stirs, her eyes fluttering open to the sound of strange laughter. Elizabeth stares at her hand in wonder, realizing that the strange phenomenon that saved her must be sorcery. Testing her theory, she extends her hand toward the food cart, causing the black energy to swarm around it. She recalls the deity's explanation that this new existence is set in a world governed by sword and sorcery. Remembering that she can move light objects, she aims her magic at the distant window latch. She focuses her will, channeling the dark energy to float herself and manipulate the lock simultaneously. The magic surges from her palm, obeying her command to interact with the mechanism she couldn't reach before. With a satisfying click, the heavy iron latch slides open under the influence of her telekinetic grip. Elizabeth bursts through the open window, laughing triumphantly as she checks off jumping out a window and landing barefoot from her list. She plummets from the high ledge, fearless and free as she dives toward the ground below. As Chloe loses consciousness again, she hears the girl's loud laughter and complains to God that this wild energy wasn't what she prayed for. A massive bear roars and lunges at the young girl, who sees the beast not as a threat, but as the main course for tonight's dinner. Unflinching in the face of danger, she unleashes her power with a shout, commanding her magic to strike. Dark energy surges forward, enveloping the bear in a swirling vortex of raw power. The bear stands momentarily frozen, stunned by the overwhelming magical pressure weighing down on it. As the beast attempts to retaliate with a ferocious swipe, the girl nimbly sidesteps the attack. She counters with a ruthless palm strike, promising to put its flesh and blood to good use for her health. Her spell, Heartstopper, lands with a dull thud, sending a lethal shockwave directly into the animal's chest. The bear collapses dead instantly, and a system notification chimes to announce that her Villainess level has jumped to 42. Pleased with her solo victory over the wildlife, she checks off yet another milestone for her healthy living goals. She marvels at the incredible convenience of this world's sorcery while dark energy swirls around the fallen predator. Effortlessly lifting the massive carcass with magic, she realizes she could never have imagined performing such a feat in her past life. Luna the cat watches from a distance, stunned by the display, while the girl celebrates how much being in another world rules. Elizabeth drops the heavy bear with a thud and declares she wants to sing a song because the world is so awesome. While Luna notes that most people couldn't imagine doing such things, Elizabeth happily sings about munching on steaks like candy. Observing the scene, the black cat introduces herself as Luna, a support familiar in charge of the villainous Elizabeth Maxwell. Luna explains that she is not allowed to directly interfere with the girl's life until the timeline of the game actually begins. She notes that the story of The Saint and the Four Knights has not yet started in this world. The familiar reveals that this reality is actually a fantasy RPG-style OTOM game complete with a school setting. She admits she has no clue whether the world was created based on the game or if the game was based on this reality. However, she knows for certain that the fate of this world depends entirely on which story branch occurs. In all 24 confirmed story branches, Elizabeth is destined to be consumed by darkness and become the Demon Lord final boss. In every single one of those scenarios, her tragic fate ends with her perishing at the hands of the heroine and her knights. Luna wonders if this repetitive cycle of destruction is the reason God decided to summon this specific girl. She speculates that perhaps the deity seeks a 25th ending, a true conclusion brought about by an unpredictable outsider. Shrugging off the heavy philosophical questions, the cat smirks, admitting she couldn't possibly know God's designs. Her train of thought is violently interrupted by a shock of fear as she realizes she is just a mere familiar. Nearby, the maid Chloe screams in sheer terror as the massive bear carcass suddenly lands in front of her. The impact kicks up a cloud of dust as the dead beast settles heavily onto the ground. Chloe demands to know what is going on, while a flushed Elizabeth cheerfully greets her maid as if nothing strange has happened. Elizabeth explains that her elder brother mocked her yesterday, telling her she could only have meat for her birthday if she hunted it herself. She cheerfully recounts how she decided to go hunting because of his challenge, while Chloe trembles with rage at the brother's cruelty. Elizabeth adds that she also wanted to be helpful, as the old gamekeeper had been struggling with a violent bear lately. Suddenly cutting the conversation short, Elizabeth declares she has to go and abruptly ends her explanation. Using her magic to slice off one of the bear's legs, she reasons that the two of them in the annex only need that much meat. She grins mischievously, noting that since she isn't allowed near the main residence, she has to fulfill her agreement to give the rest to her brother. With a burst of magical strength, she prepares to hurl the remainder of the massive carcass toward the mansion. She launches the bear through the air with perfect aim, ignoring Luna's panicked cry to wait. A black cat familiar senses the story's beginning and decides it is finally time to check on her, after 6 years of avoidance. He shudders at the memory that even as an 8-year-old, she was a level 42 monster comparable to a small T-Rex. The cat recalls her terrifying intellect and her signature dark magic that shuts down victims' senses to stop their hearts. His mind conjures a flashback where the young Elizabeth views him as a snack to be swallowed whole. He spirals further into paranoia, imagining a scenario where she uses him for sadistic target practice with knives. The familiar's nightmare concludes with a vision of her crushing him simply for being a weak and lowly tyrant. Trembling with fear, he dreads the reality that he must act as a support character for this terrifying girl. He steels himself by recalling the plot of the OTOM game, The Saint and the Four Knights, which is about to commence. The narrative sets the stage in the Zelvia Kingdom, where the heroine Karen and the love interests will soon enroll at the academy. The cat forces himself to stop escaping reality and accepts that he must face the villainous Elizabeth head-on. A carriage stands ready at the mansion as Elizabeth and her maid Chloe prepare for the journey to the Royal Academy. Elizabeth cheerfully signals their departure, and Chloe confirms the trip will take 10 days. The young noblewoman beams with a dazzling smile, exclaiming that the upcoming school life is going to be awesome. Chloe is stunned by this radiant positivity, wondering if this cheerful girl is truly the gloomy child she once knew. The maid sighs in relief, grateful that Elizabeth seems to have retained her humanity and grown into a respectable lady. Elizabeth pauses before entering the carriage and turns back to the mansion with a sweet yet ominous smile. Her two older brothers recoil in abject terror, peeking fearfully from behind the safety of a window. She lovingly tells her brother to take care of his body, while the cat notes the man has wasted away from stress. Elizabeth's smile sharpens as she threatens to magically wring the fat out of him again if he isn't careful. The brothers scramble away in a panic, desperate to escape the sight of their tormentor. Witnessing this, the cat screams internally and begs for someone to drive this demon out of the house. As the carriage rolls out, Elizabeth comments to Chloe that it has been a long time since they left the domain. The cat grumbles that the last time involved a dragon abduction where he was unceremoniously dropped. Elizabeth interrupts the peaceful ride, asking if Chloe heard screams from the distance. She calmly deduces that a group of monsters is attacking a carriage 4 kilometers away based on the roars. Ignoring the danger, she declares she will head there immediately and steps out of the moving carriage. Elizabeth activates her magic with a focused expression, ready to engage the distant enemy. A massive surge of dark energy erupts from her body, propelling her into the sky. The cat watches in disbelief as a dome of darkness expands instantly, covering the entire battlefield miles away. Elizabeth flies through the air, descending upon the horde of orcs and goblins attacking the travelers. She hovers above the chaos and reaches out a hand, targeting the hearts of the monsters below. With a simple, crushing gesture of her hand, she executes her signature lethal magic. The hearts of every goblin and orc explode simultaneously within their chests. The monsters collapse in unison, dead before they even hit the ground. The knights defending the carriage panic in the sudden magical darkness, unable to see their enemies falling. As the darkness lifts, the knights are baffled to find the entire enemy force wiped out in a single instant. One knight inspects the bodies, incredulous that a level 45 mage could perform a feat requiring level 100 power. Elizabeth smiles with satisfaction, her hair flowing in the wind as she surveys her handiwork. She turns and walks away from the scene, leaving the bewildered survivors without a word. Returning to her own carriage, she cheerfully tells Chloe that everyone is safe and signals to resume their journey. A blonde boy from the rescued party stares after the mysterious girl, recognizing the uniform of the Royal Academy. Arriving at her destination, the imposing structure of the Zelvia Royal Academy front gate looms ahead. Students mill about the entrance, their excited chatter filling the air as the new school term begins. Stepping forward with anticipation, Elizabeth declares that she has finally arrived at the academy. She laughs off the absurdity of the situation, playfully wondering if she can make 1,000,000 friends before choking up with emotion. A cynical voice interrupts her daydream, advising her to be more realistic and delete at least 6 zeros from that goal. Elizabeth spots a black cat wagging its tail on the cobblestones and is startled when it casually says hello. Before the creature can finish introducing itself, Elizabeth swiftly grabs it, silencing its squeak with a firm squeeze of her hand. She hoists the cat by the scruff of its neck, leaving it paralyzed and questioning why it suddenly cannot move. Ignoring the creature's distress, she muses that a talking cat is likely a rare monster she can sell to the guild for a profit. As Elizabeth drools over the prospect of a big payday, the terrified cat screams that it is actually a familiar of God. Composing itself, the cat clears its throat and reintroduces itself as Luna, a supporter dispatched by the divine. Now sitting on a bench, Luna explains that she has been sent to aid Elizabeth in every aspect of her daily life. The cat begins to remind her of the divine mission she accepted, setting the stage for their partnership. Rubbing affectionately against Elizabeth's hand, Luna insists that she deserves special treatment for undertaking God's earnest wish. A magical pentagram flashes in the cat's eye as she prepares to formalize their connection. Luna clarifies that she will act as an advisor and friend, though she suspects Elizabeth is strong enough not to need much help. Delighted by the arrangement, Elizabeth thrills at the prospect of having fabulously fluffy fur to pet 24 hours a day. While other students whisper about the girl talking to thin air, Luna reveals she is communicating via telepathy only Elizabeth can hear. Elizabeth stares blankly at the cat as Luna bluntly points out that to everyone else, she looks like a weirdo talking to a stray. Luna urges her to ignore the trivialities and get moving, warning that the main event is about to begin. The campus grounds bustle with activity as the announcer calls for quiet to begin the magic measurement exam. While Elizabeth identifies the event as a simple exam, Luna ominously corrects her by calling it an ordeal. The cat explains the danger lies in the fact that Elizabeth's level of 945 already far exceeds that of many demon lords. Luna warns that accidentally unleashing her full power now would terrify the world and send the other students flying. Such an event would lead to a bad end where she is ostracized and becomes a hate-filled demon lord who despises the world. The cat stresses the gravity of the situation, declaring that it would literally mean the end of the world. As an apostle of God, Luna asserts she is here to prevent that apocalypse, noting she prefers not to stand out. Elizabeth looks concerned, admitting to the cat that self-restraint and holding back are not exactly her strong suits. Realizing the hopelessness of the situation, Luna panics and concludes that the world is absolutely screwed. Elizabeth reflects on her previous life where she died without achieving anything, explaining to the cat why she feels the need to be active. She describes the sheer joy of rebirth, which drove her to run, jump, and push her new body to its absolute physical limits. Caught up in the thrill of her new existence, she admits that she spent her time battling non-stop to test her strength. The landscape reveals the aftermath of her training, showing massive craters and devastation carved into the earth by her movements. Elizabeth cheerfully confesses that the concept of self-restraint completely vanished as she decimated wolves and bears to test her limits. Luna interrupts to clarify that Elizabeth didn't engage in senseless killing, but merely decimated the bosses of the nearby forest of beasts. The cat explains that unlike monsters who instinctively attack humans, she only kills enough to feed herself and survive. Luna questions Elizabeth's sanity, asking if she seriously plans to make friends with normal people given her violent history and mindset. Elizabeth practices a terrifying introduction, cheerfully announcing her special skills are insta-kill spells and mass murder. The other students recoil in horror, and Luna points out that such a violent intro will ensure no girls will ever want to be her friend. Luna warns that she will only attract bloodthirsty berserkers, causing Elizabeth to cry that she just wants sweets and flower-scented girls. The cat advises her to learn self-restraint at the academy so she can successfully integrate and make friends with others. Elizabeth agrees enthusiastically, while Luna adds that she should also learn common sense to keep the world and the cat's peace of mind intact. Determined to master self-restraint, Elizabeth sprints away with such explosive speed that she creates a shockwave that nearly blows her future friends over. Luna watches her vanish, noting the irony of using excessive force to pursue restraint and suggesting she learn listening skills too. A scoreboard displays a shocking number as the magic measurement exam continues. St. Karen stands before the measuring crystal, her magic power radiating intensely as she takes the test. The crowd erupts into amazed chatter as the results of the saint's exam become visible to everyone. Students gasp that the previous record was 39, making Karen's score of over 100 a staggering achievement. Luna stares in shock, realizing that a score of 123 is a new record since the Academy's founding. The cat identifies the girl as St. Karen, the protagonist of the game, who accepts the praise with a shy blush. Luna recalls that this magic measurement exam was the exact moment where the enmity between Karen and Elizabeth began in the original story. In the game, the villainous Elizabeth had set a record of 122, her confidence stemming from her potent demon lord magic. However, Karen immediately toppled that record with a score of 123, stealing the spotlight and humiliating the villainess. Having her only source of pride shattered, the original Elizabeth swore to make Karen submit, starting her path to darkness. Luna watches the scene tensely, determined to prevent the current Elizabeth from going down that destructive route. To Luna's surprise, Elizabeth stares at Karen with sparkling eyes and simply whispers a genuine wow in admiration. A mental flowchart confirms that without humiliation, the villainous route is avoided, and Luna sighs in relief. The examiner calls for the next student, shouting for Elizabeth Maxwell to come up to the crystal. Elizabeth raises her hand enthusiastically, accidentally smacking Luna, and shouts that she is coming right now. The atmosphere instantly shifts as the other students look at her with visible fear and hostility. The crowd parts in silence to let her pass, whispering about her ominous appearance as she walks toward the stage. Students mutter hateful comments about the demon lord girl, with black hair and eyes, questioning why she is even allowed in the school. Oblivious to the malice, Elizabeth smiles brightly and asks Mr. Cat what the whispering is all about. Luna realizes that this unwarranted hostility from everyone was the other major factor that drove Elizabeth to become the demon lord. The teacher rudely orders her to just touch the crystal and get her damn score, causing Luna to worry Elizabeth might snap at the animosity. Elizabeth ignores the hate, assuring Luna she is used to it, and prepares to exercise maximum self-restraint to keep her output low. Karen watches Elizabeth approach the crystal, a look of recognition crossing her face. The saint realizes that Elizabeth is the same girl she met back in the forest. The air grows heavy with anticipation as Elizabeth steps forward to take her turn. Elizabeth wishes herself good luck, trying to suppress her power, while Luna clings to her shoulder. A sharp, high-pitched ping echoes through the hall as she makes contact with the measuring device. Karen turns around just as the massive crystal shatters into pieces from the overwhelming force of the contact. Elizabeth stands amidst the debris with a confused expression, while Luna stares in utter disbelief at the destruction. Karen covers her mouth in shock and inexplicably stammers that she didn't mean to do it. The cat falls into a stunned silence, gasping at the unprecedented event. As the dust settles, Luna panics and wonders if they have just accidentally entered a completely different story route. Blushing deeply, Karen bows her head and shyly thanks Elizabeth for saving her the other day. Elizabeth is instantly captivated by the girl's long eyelashes and innocent aura, wondering if they have met somewhere before. The girl introduces herself as Karen, a commoner scholarship student and prospective saint from the Church of Stars. With a hopeful gaze that makes Elizabeth's heart pound, Karen asks if she would consider becoming her school friend. Elizabeth is stunned by the request as Karen confesses she couldn't help but admire her amazing display back then. Unable to resist, Elizabeth takes Karen's hands and stammers that she would love to be her friend. Internally, Elizabeth trembles and screams over Karen's overwhelming cuteness while trying to maintain her composure. Karen beams with pure joy, gladly accepting the friendship with a radiant smile. Elizabeth is so overcome by the blinding smile that she freezes, leaving the black cat to stare in shock. Narration reveals that Saint Karen is the dangerously cute protagonist who unwittingly conquered her love interest's hearts. A montage shows how she captured the hearts of various characters in one fell swoop with her natural charm. Back in reality, the two exchange nicknames, prompting the cat to realize Karen's terrifying protagonist powers have conquered Elizabeth too. Luna telepathically scolds Elizabeth for screaming noisily in her own head about achieving her goal of making friends. The cat welcomes her back to the physical world, noting that the external situation is just as noisy as her internal monologue. The surrounding crowd stares at the stage in stunned silence, processing the scene before them. Onlookers gape at the shattered crystal, questioning what kind of absurd magic power was required to destroy it. Students whisper in disbelief, wondering if Elizabeth is the strongest one there or if she simply used a trick. Jealous male students clamor that she must have cheated, demanding to know what trick the black-haired girl used. Luna informs Elizabeth that her accidental destruction of the crystal has made her the talk of the academy and labeled her a cheater. Warning her mistress, the cat explains that the world's causality is out of whack and anything can happen now. A fist suddenly clenches and cracks with intensity, signaling a new threat. A loud, aggressive voice roars for everyone to quit their yammering immediately. Elizabeth and Karen turn their heads in surprise to locate the source of the commotion. A student crushes a stone in his hand, declaring that breaking a stupid little rock is nothing special. He unleashes a burst of energy to pulverize the debris, sneering that such a feat is effortless. Striking a pose, he arrogantly proclaims that he is the one who will stand at the top of this academy. Luna identifies him as Reyes the Flame, one of the regular route love interests known for his fire magic. The cat explains he is a hot-blooded shonen character whose power multiplies when the saint prays for him. Despite his stats, Luna doubts he can claim the top spot with Elizabeth present. Elizabeth asks if he is the chaos Luna predicted, noting he looks like he walked out of a delinquent manga. Luna's eye flashes with a warning as she realizes this Reyes is way too different from the original game version. Reyes raises his fist, shouting that breaking inanimate rocks isn't any fun at all. He readies his weapon with a sharp metallic clang, intent on violence. Identifying him as a level 99 apprentice Flame Knight, Luna gasps in horror as he launches an attack. Reyes swings his blade at Elizabeth, tearing her cape while screaming that nothing beats breaking a living human. Elizabeth dodges the strike while clutching the cat, remarking that he truly is a troublesome one. Sighing as her cape flutters, she complains that she is supposed to be exercising self-restraint. The familiar stares in horror at the glowing pentagram, realizing that Reyes has also been corrupted by the world's distortion. Karen is left trembling in shock, noting that while Reyes was merely level 10 in the original game, he is now an inexplicable level 99. She internally screams, terrified that the world itself is trying to force a balance against the anomaly of its current state. The narrative suggests that Reyes is a monster created specifically to oppose Elizabeth, who has become an overpowered monster herself. With a roar of determination, Reyes launches himself forward to begin the battle. He swings his blade with massive force, but misses his target completely as she effortlessly evades. The momentum carries him headfirst into a crystal pillar, shattering it upon impact with a sickening crack. The crowd watches in stunned silence, their jaws dropping at the sheer absurdity of the self-inflicted violence. Spectators erupt into confusion, shouting that the attacker just went flying and destroyed the crystal with his own head. Reyes groans in pain amidst the rubble, while terrified students recognize him as the dangerous, mad dog Reyes, who fights anyone he deems strong. The attention shifts to the black-haired girl standing on the wall, as the students whisper about Reyes's supposed skill. Elizabeth smiles with amusement as the crowd debates whether she is actually skilled or if Reyes just tripped, noting she didn't even touch him. Looking down from her perch, she taunts him calmly, asking if he would like to try again. Reyes pushes himself up with a grin, admitting he has no clue what she did but declaring that he is all fired up now. He crouches down, shouting that he is going to release his maximum power immediately. A booming voice interrupts the fight, ordering them to stop right there before things escalate further. Magical chains instantly bind both students, immobilizing them in place to their visible confusion. A stern teacher sighs at the pettiness of squabbling during the entrance ceremony and questions Reyes about his max power nonsense. The teacher orders the guards to take them away to the faculty room, leaving Reyes complaining that his strength is being drained. The crowd chatters excitedly as Elizabeth is led away, her name rippling through the onlookers. Some students express disappointment, complaining that it was boring because they wanted to see the black-haired girl's trickery exposed. Jealous whispers spread that the fight must be rigged because she is a marquis's daughter with money and power. Karen overhears the malicious gossip and squeezes her hands tightly, her expression darkening in anger. The clock tower chimes, marking the passage of 3 long hours since the incident. Reyes collapses face first onto the ground, groaning that he is dead, while Elizabeth steps out looking completely unfazed. Elizabeth brushes her hair back with a smile, remarking to her cat that the teacher's scolding is truly no joke. She internally scoffs that compared to a lich's death chant or a monster's petrifying howl, a teacher's lecture is just a pleasant breeze. Elizabeth cheerfully reveals that she actually used magic to create a soundproof barrier, so she didn't hear a single word of the sermon. The cat telepathically scolds her for her arrogance and promises to give her a long lecture on self-restraint tonight. Someone suddenly calls out for them to hold it as Elizabeth wonders where Karen went. Elizabeth trembles as she recalls the guidebook schedule, realizing that all the students are currently gathered at the training ground for martial aptitude tests. Stealing her resolve, she thanks the cat for pointing the way and heads toward the arena to prove her worth to everyone. A foot pivots sharply on the pavement, signaling her change in direction as she moves with newfound purpose. Elizabeth vows to silence the doubters by demonstrating true self-restraint, ignoring the skeptical look Reyes gives her from behind. The cat peers up from her arms with a doubtful expression, questioning if she can actually pull off such a delicate feat. Loud shouts and the clash of weapons echo from Training Ground 1, where the students are already deeply engaged in combat. Aspiring knights spar vigorously with practiced swords, their grunts of exertion filling the air as they trade blows. A student collapses to the ground in defeat, landing with a heavy thud right in front of the newly arrived Elizabeth and her cat. The victor mocks the trembling girl for not knowing when to quit, laughing as she struggles to stand on her wobbly legs. Tears in her eyes, the girl screams that Lady Elizabeth would never cheat, demanding the bully take back his insults immediately. He kicks her brutally to the ground, sneering that he might listen if a stupid commoner like her could actually defeat him. Recognizing the trigger, the cat panics and realizes there is absolutely no chance Elizabeth will maintain her self-restraint after seeing that. A sudden, violent tremor shakes the entire arena, causing students to lose their balance and scream in terror at the apparent earthquake. Elizabeth bursts onto the scene with blinding speed, her movement creating a shockwave that leaves Reyes and the cat stunned. She lands with devastating force, shattering the stone ground and sending students flying with the sheer power of her impact. Calmly apologizing for her lateness, she introduces herself to the trembling instructor and declares she is ready for her aptitude test. The instructor nervously explains the rules, stating she must use a wooden weapon and avoid offensive spells since healers are present. He gestures toward a weapon rack filled with swords and spears, telling her to pick whatever she is good with. Ignoring the wooden weapons, Elizabeth walks over to a large tree and effortlessly rips it out of the earth with a sickening crack. She hoists the massive tree onto her shoulder as if it were a twig, leaving the instructor and students gaping in absolute horror. With a radiant, innocent smile, she turns to the frozen crowd and sweetly asks if anyone would care to have a bout with her. Elizabeth effortlessly hoists the massive tree trunk onto her shoulder, turning her back to the stunned crowd with casual indifference. Karen stares up in trembling awe, whispering Lady Elizabeth's name as the reality of the situation sets in. A sudden gust of wind swirls around the makeshift weapon, signaling the start of the confrontation. Elizabeth smiles with chilling confidence, inviting her opponents to attack whenever they feel brave enough. Her black cat familiar screams at the students, calling them absolute fools for failing to realize the danger they are in. As Elizabeth radiates a terrifyingly dark aura, the cat demands to know why they would be stupid enough to anger a demon lord. Elizabeth assures her panicked familiar that she will exercise self-restraint, though her ominous tone suggests otherwise. One of the bullies grinds his teeth, refusing to trust the words of a monster holding a tree. A sneer twists his lips as he convinces himself that she is merely bluffing to hide a weakness. He stares at her midsection, analyzing her stance and preparing to exploit what he believes is a flaw. Stepping forward with renewed arrogance, the leader slams his foot down and brandishes his sword. He scoffs that she is just like the commoner, using magic to enhance her body because she lacks true skill. Dismissing her feat as a parlor trick, he claims that while she can lift the weight, the strain renders her completely immobile. He charges forward with a manic grin, shouting that she is a fraud who cannot move an inch. Promising to make her cough up a sea of blood, he unleashes a vicious slash aimed directly at her torso. The blade cuts through the air, carrying the full weight of his malice toward her exposed body. Metal meets flesh with a dull, heavy thud, as if the sword has struck a solid wall of iron rather than a human girl. The impact sends a violent shockwave up the attacker's arms, vibrating his bones and leaving his hands completely numb. He recoils in sheer horror, unable to comprehend how her abdomen could be as hard as stone despite the physical strain. Elizabeth leans in with a terrifying smile, asking whoever told him she was using magic to enhance her body. The student stares up in paralyzed fear as the massive log casts a shadow over him like a falling skyscraper. She swings the colossal timber with terrifying speed, preparing to correct his foolish assumption manually. Smashing the log into the ground, she explains that her power is merely the result of her never-ending quest for good health. She leans closer, her eyes gleaming with intensity, and declares that it is pure, unadulterated physical strength. Desperate and terrified, the students unleash a barrage of offensive magic spells, screaming for her to die. A massive explosion engulfs her position, kicking up a thick cloud of smoke and debris. The attackers celebrate their direct hit, panting heavily and convinced that no one could survive such a blast. As the smoke clears, they gape in horror to find her standing completely unharmed, with not even a thread of her clothing damaged. She casually blows the lingering smoke away, attributing her survival to her lung capacity before correcting herself. Terrified by what they believe is a legendary demon reincarnated, the bullies turn and flee for their lives. The cat screeches at Elizabeth to stop, warning that she is going overboard and will be labeled a criminal if she continues. Ignoring the warning, she snaps her fingers and casts a spell that instantly stiffens the fleeing students mid-stride. The boys freeze in place, their bodies locking up with a sickening creak as the magic takes hold. The cat gasps, recognizing the technique and asking if she just used a high-level restraining spell. Elizabeth clarifies it is a compulsory defensive spell that renders targets immobile but impervious to physical damage. The cat looks at the frozen boys with pity, noting how uncomfortable their tight pants must be in that rigid position. Elizabeth flashes a peace sign with a cheeky smile, claiming this proves she is exercising perfect self-restraint. The frozen students scream about their influential fathers and threaten revenge for the humiliation. She squeezes the magic tighter to silence them, declaring she is sick of listening to their entitled babble. Her expression softens into solemn resolve as she vows never to let anyone hurt her very first friend. Karen clutches her chest, her heart pounding as she overhears the touching declaration. Elizabeth swings the tree again with joyous abandon, shouting that she would fight the whole world for her friend. Two male students lie buried in the dirt, completely knocked out by the impact of the massive tree trunk. A quiet wind blows through the training grounds, filling the stunned silence following the attack. Reyes stands frozen in shock while Elizabeth calmly adjusts her cuffs as if nothing happened. The crowd erupts into terrified murmurs, questioning the sanity of what they just witnessed. Students whisper in fear that she used a whole tree to hammer people into the ground like nails. Elizabeth turns with a bright, innocent smile and claims she merely used a defensive spell. Her expression freezes as she notices the terrified silence of the crowd. Internally, she screams in panic, realizing she completely failed to hold back. Luna scolds her telepathically, noting that displaying such monstrous strength scares away ordinary girls. Elizabeth looks toward Karen in terror, fearing she has frightened off her potential new friend. To her surprise, Karen dashes toward her with a look of intense urgency instead of running away. The cat notes that the heroine isn't bothered at all as Karen grabs Elizabeth's hands. With tears welling in her eyes, Karen cries out Elizabeth's name in pure distress. Elizabeth beams with relief, happy that Karen is still willing to approach her. Karen frantically checks her for injuries, convinced that the loud impact noise meant Elizabeth's bones were broken. Ignoring reality, Karen activates a high-level holy spell to heal the imaginary wounds. A blinding flash of light erupts, encasing them both in a massive protective dome. Luna explains that this holy barrier isolates them from the world to amplify healing magic. The cat observes in awe that Karen's magic output is incredible for a level 2 healer. Karen's expression shifts to intense professional focus as she scans Elizabeth for damage. Elizabeth tries to assure her she is fine, but Karen insists on checking if she feels strange anywhere. With a cheerful smile, Karen announces she will do a final check and reaches for Elizabeth's clothes. Elizabeth blinks in confusion, unable to process why Karen wants to take her clothes off. Moving with supernatural speed, Karen begins to strip Elizabeth's uniform to inspect her skin directly. The cat watches in shock as the heroine boldly strips the final boss right in the middle of the arena. Luna explains that Karen is a perfectionist who must visually verify that her patient is fully healed. This compulsive behavior earned her the nickname, the angelic stripping fiend, among players. Karen forces Elizabeth to lie down and begins a hands-on examination while the cat comments on the fan service. Luna notes that the game allows Karen to legally strip other characters under the guise of medical treatment. As Karen's exquisite fingers work over Elizabeth's body, the cat celebrates the high-quality scene. Outside the opaque barrier, the crowd hears misleading gasps, leading to a massive misunderstanding. The headmaster arrives on the scene, marveling at the high-level construction of the holy barrier. He admits that even his advanced magical sight cannot penetrate the wall of light to see inside. Recognizing the magic, he identifies the caster as the treasure of the Church of Stars. He explains that Karen is the heaven-sent child of light, a prodigy who used magic before she could speak. With deep reverence, the headmaster declares that she might be the future hope of humanity. Inside the barrier, humanity's hope shakes a steaming, unconscious Elizabeth, wondering why she passed out. The scene shifts to the Academy clock tower as evening settles over the campus. Steam rises from the impact craters where the students were brutally hammered into the earth. Reyes inspects the damage, chuckling as he acknowledges that Elizabeth is truly in a class of her own. Despite her overwhelming power, he grins arrogantly and vows that he will still be the one to stand at the top. The instructor announces that the 3 bullies will have their heads shaved and face a 6-month suspension for using forbidden spells to ambush a female student. Screaming in horror at the prospect of being bald, the boys beg to contact their fathers as they are forcibly dragged away to meet their punishment. Outside the faculty room, teachers express their frustration with students who enroll merely to abuse their parents' influence instead of learning. Inside, the staff debates how to handle Elizabeth, fearing that simply ignoring the commotion she caused will upset the rest of the student body. The headmaster sighs that too many people misunderstand the academy's purpose and decides to turn this incident into a teaching moment. With a calculating smile, he concludes that they have no choice but to have Elizabeth demonstrate her power further to settle the matter. A formal announcement is posted on the bulletin board declaring a demonstration to clarify the academy's founding principles. The next day, students chatter with excitement and confusion as they gather to read the unexpected news. A large crowd forms around the notice board, buzzing with speculation about what the administration is planning. Elizabeth and Karen stare at the announcement in stunned silence, completely blindsided by the sudden development. While Karen finds the idea of a combat demonstration exciting, Elizabeth is less enthusiastic despite her familiar skitty reaction. A passing student bumps into Elizabeth and mockingly asks if she plans to restrain herself again, signaling the student body's lingering resentment. Watching from the sidelines, a spiky-haired boy grins with predatory delight as he zeroes in on his target. Elizabeth asks her cat about the divine trial by combat, which he explains is an archaic rule where God sides with the victor. The eavesdropping boy laughs aloud, confirming that the ancient might makes right philosophy still governs the academy. Without warning, he hurls a glove straight at Elizabeth's face to initiate the formal challenge procedure. She snatches the glove out of the air with lightning reflexes, leaving Karen shocked while the challenger strikes a dramatic pose. He declares that since the school has set the stage for a demonstration, he is seizing the opportunity to throw down the gauntlet. Pointing a finger directly at her, he officially challenges Elizabeth to a divine trial by combat. The surrounding students gasp in surprise as Karen steps in front of Elizabeth to confront the aggressor. She demands he wait a second, trying to de-escalate the situation before it turns into a brawl. Karen angrily asks what Elizabeth did wrong and if his challenge is basically an objection to her enrollment. He dismisses her questions with a scoff, calling her an idiot and stating he couldn't care less about enrollment politics. With a crazed grin, he screams that his only motivation is a pure, simple desire to fight. Clenching his fist, he declares that logic is irrelevant because he simply intends to win and stand at the top. Karen yells back in frustration, completely unable to comprehend his simple-minded and violent logic. Elizabeth smiles gently and thanks Karen for trying to defend her honor. She steps forward with a confident smile, telling Karen she has done enough and that she will handle him personally. She considers wrapping the fight up quickly, comparing it to her brief encounter with the 3 bullies yesterday. However, angered by his insult toward Karen, she decides to take her sweet time and pummel him thoroughly instead. The challenger is thrilled by her acceptance and eagerly confirms that the fight is officially on. The crowd erupts into cheers, realizing they are about to witness a showdown between Mad Dog Reyes and Elizabeth the Destroyer. As the combatants take their places in the arena with real swords, students whisper about Reyes's dangerous reputation. The announcer calls out Elizabeth Maxwell's name as she stands ready to face her opponent. Reyes grins with terrifying intensity, his eyes wide with the anticipation of the violence to come. The referee commands them to swear to fight honorably and officially begins the divine trial by combat. The instructor barks a stern warning that destroying the swords or the stage is strictly prohibited. Elizabeth grips the practice blade nervously while the instructor adds that she shouldn't destroy common sense either. Reyes points his blade with a feral grin, acknowledging that the rules apply to him as well. The judge announces that any violation will result in disqualification and the match ends upon surrender. Elizabeth clasps her hands in prayer while the crowd demands an honorable fight from both sides. The duel begins with an explosive start as Reyes launches himself forward with a roar. Spectators gasp in shock as he recklessly jumps through the air straight toward her. Reyes screams his intent to settle the score from their previous encounter immediately. Flashbacks of being sent flying fuel his rage as he swings his massive sword down. Elizabeth offers a polite, enigmatic smile before simply saying, "Well then." She taps her foot on the ground, creating a subtle but decisive impact. Without warning, Reyes is blasted backward through the air to the crowd's utter disbelief. He lands hard on the stone floor, eyes wide with confusion as he tries to process the invisible counter. Ignoring the pain, he activates an explosive fire spell directly on his hilt to propel himself back. The blast launches him into the fray as he declares he can handle the trick now that he expects it. Steel clashes against steel with a resounding impact that echoes through the arena. The staff observes with interest, noting his clever use of explosion magic for mid-air mobility. Locking blades, Reyes admits she startled him but remains confident she missed her chance. He taunts her with a smirk, claiming that the same parlor trick won't work on him twice. Swords spark as they trade rapid blows, with Reyes boasting about his superior skill. He laughs wildly, declaring that to him, she is nothing more than a monster to be hunted. In his mind, he visualizes her not as a lady, but as a freakishly strong gorilla with cheap tricks. Unleashing a torrent of strikes, he vows that her little gimmicks won't save her this time. Elizabeth desperately parries the onslaught, barely keeping up with the ferocious attacks. A sharp strike slices part of her outfit, signaling how close he is to landing a critical hit. He drives her back with a heavy blow, skidding her boots across the arena floor. The students chatter in awe, realizing the Mad Dog is actually a skilled swordsman. Teachers recognize his style, noting he is the son of the Royal Guard's commander, George Gaius. Reyes announces his full name, demanding respect as a warrior of elite lineage. He presses the attack, convinced that his special training places him far above her level. Meanwhile, Elizabeth hugs the cat, who casually comments on the firmness of her chest pillows. Luna telepathically assures her that she isn't losing, she's just trying too hard to follow the rules. Elizabeth panics internally, realizing her struggle is entirely about preserving the fragile weapon. She frets that using magic would shatter her own sword, but blocking too hard would break his. The headmaster realizes she is handicapping herself solely to protect the school's equipment. Luna points out the loophole, noting that no rule explicitly forces her to fight with a sword. The cat suggests she simply ditch the weapon and fight with her bare hands. Elizabeth's eyes light up as the realization hits her like a bolt of lightning. Reyes charges in for the finisher, yelling at her not to space out in the middle of battle. With casual ease, Elizabeth catches his full power strike between her thumb and forefinger. Reyes struggles in vain to move his blade, terrified by the immovable force gripping his weapon. Elizabeth tosses her own sword aside, relieved she no longer has to worry about breaking it. A dark aura surrounds her as she smiles and asks if he is ready to surrender. Grabbing his face with an iron grip, she asks if he really just called her a gorilla. She slams him into the floor and spins him like a ragdoll with terrifying speed. With a final throw, Reyes flies into the barrier and gets electrocuted, ending the match. Reyes tumbles helplessly through the air, his body spinning out of control from the sheer force of the impact. He crashes into the ground and skids to a halt, stunned that he hasn't felt a strike this heavy in years. A memory surfaces of a deadly battle against a giant three-eyed wolf in a frozen wasteland. His mind flashes to another life-threatening encounter with a massive dragon deep within a cavern. Shaking off the dizziness, he realizes that neither of those legendary beasts hit as hard as the girl before him. He shudders as he recalls the only creature in his memory that could possibly compare to this overwhelming power. A terrifying silhouette of a massive ape looms in his mind, representing the raw, primal strength he just experienced. Elizabeth smiles politely and apologizes for her earlier rudeness in calling him a mere gorilla. She points a finger and corrects herself, clarifying that he is actually much more significant than a simple ape. With a mocking grin, she dubs him the divine ruler of all gorillas and promises to send him flying even higher next time. She attempts to cast her binding spell, but the invisible magic shatters into pieces around him with a deafening crack. The cat gapes in shock as Reyes grins triumphantly, declaring that her cheap trick won't work on him a second time. The headmaster observes with interest, noting that Reyes managed to cut through the spell's hint before it could fully manifest. Reyes brandishes his glowing sword, shouting that he has honed his instincts too well to fall for such a lousy spell. He charges forward with blinding speed, preparing to strike her down with his honed blade. Screaming the name of his supreme fire spell, he unleashes a massive hellfire blade to incinerate her. Elizabeth calmly attempts to catch the burning blade, even as Reyes roars that she cannot possibly stop it. He laughs that she will suffer a terrible burn the moment she tries to pinch the magical fire with her bare hands. Mocking her as a meathead, he puts his full weight behind the attack while she takes a deep, deliberate breath. Elizabeth exhales a sharp, powerful gust of air directly onto the roaring flames of his magical sword. The intense fire flickers and dies instantly, fizzling out completely like a candle in a hurricane. Reyes stares in disbelief as the flames vanish, leaving him holding a smoking, non-magical sword. Elizabeth strikes a proud pose and giggles, attributing the impossible feat to her impressive lung capacity. The spectators and the headmaster are flabbergasted, unable to comprehend how someone could blow out magical fire with mere breath. Reyes stands frozen with his mouth open, his mind completely unable to process the absurdity of what just happened. Elizabeth lectures him on the importance of breathing, claiming his ignorance of its health benefits is his fatal flaw. She delivers a devastating chop to his neck, declaring that his physical training is fundamentally lacking. As Reyes collapses from the blow, she cheerfully recommends he start doing radio exercises to improve his condition. Reyes collapses onto the stone floor, his body trembling from the overwhelming defeat. Elizabeth wags her finger violently and lectures him that his basic strength is simply not good enough. She smiles pleasantly and highly recommends he start practicing her special radio exercises. The term triggers a dormant memory in Reyes, transporting him back to a terrifying night under the moon. He recalls standing frozen in fear as a small figure stood atop a mountain of defeated monsters. The silhouette announces Radio Exercise 236, which involves sparring with 100 Tyranno dragons. In the present, Reyes stares in absolute horror as he connects the dots. His face twists in disbelief, realizing the nightmare from his past is standing right in front of him. Trembling, he asks if she is the legendary figure known as the Legend of the Primeval Forest. Elizabeth tilts her head with a feigned innocent smile, pretending not to understand his accusation. Reyes finishes his sentence, identifying her by the terrifying title of the Dark Princess of Slaughter. The black cat erupts into mischievous laughter, clearly enjoying the revelation of her dark past. Elizabeth frantically tries to silence the cat, embarrassed that her humiliating nickname has resurfaced. She turns to Reyes and demands to know where on earth he learned that embarrassing name. He explains that the legend originated 5 years ago in the dangerous primeval forest near her domain. Unsettling screams of dragons and the maniacal laughter of a girl used to echo from the deep woods. The disturbances grew so frequent that the Knights and Adventurer Guild dispatched a team to investigate. To their horror, they discovered a small girl with black hair and dark clothes in the clearing. She was covered in blood and smiling broadly while brutalizing a pack of Tyranno dragons. The terrifying sight earned her the title Dark Princess of Slaughter, causing even the survey team to flee. A flashback reveals Chloe rushing into the mansion to tell young Elizabeth about the rumors of a mysterious monster. In the memory, Chloe makes a smug face, implying she enjoyed the chaos the rumor caused. Elizabeth screams internally, wondering who came up with such a cringeworthy nickname. Back in the present, Reyes points a thumb at himself and proudly claims he was the one who coined the name. He reveals he was part of that survey team and was actually the first one to spot her that night. He admits he was awestruck by her insane strength, which defied all logic and training. That encounter inspired him to find his own path in life and become a warrior. Gazing at his trembling hands, he acknowledges he still has a long way to go to reach her level. Reyes abruptly bows his head and loses consciousness, steaming as he collapses into a seated defeat. The barrier shatters around them, leaving the crowd confused by the sudden end to the duel. The judge declares Elizabeth the winner while she frantically assures the cat she didn't kill anyone. Karen stands nervously outside the Royal Academy, gazing at the imposing venue of the welcome party. Elaborately dressed students stream past her, chatter filling the air as the event begins. She spots a familiar carriage approaching and perks up, sensing her friend's arrival. A polished black shoe steps out, striking the ground with the confidence of royalty. Nearby students gasp in recognition, whispering about the arrival of the infamous Villainess. Prince Lux watches from his own carriage, a smirk playing on his lips as he observes the scene. Karen beams with delight, her eyes sparkling as she watches her friend emerge. Jet black hair flows in the evening breeze, creating a striking contrast against the festive lights. Elizabeth Maxwell stands revealed in a stunning black dress, radiating an aura of dark elegance. She executes a flawless curtsy, playfully demonstrating formal etiquette to her awestruck friend. Elizabeth giggles and thanks Karen, exchanging warm compliments on their beautiful attire. A status window confirms Elizabeth is in refined lady mode, looking every bit the noblewoman. Karen stammers in admiration, admitting she isn't used to wearing such fancy dresses. Elizabeth's cat screams internally, overwhelmed by how incredibly adorable his master looks. Elizabeth apologizes to her noisy familiar while ascending the grand staircase with Karen. She confesses her excitement to Karen, eager to experience her very first formal party. The ballroom opens up like a scene from a fairy tale, dazzling the girls with its splendor. Elizabeth recalls her past life spent bedridden in a hospital, dreaming of a night like this. She pumps her fist, declaring that her healthy new body is ready to conquer the world. The two girls stand awkwardly in the crowd, realizing with a laugh that no one is approaching them. Students whisper about the ominous black-haired girl, ruining Elizabeth's plan to showcase her dance moves. Karen clenches her fist to gather courage, then extends her hand toward her friend. She bows formally and asks Elizabeth if she would do her the honor of this dance. Elizabeth blinks in genuine surprise, completely taken off guard by the bold gesture. Karen pushes past her insecurity as a commoner, deciding to fulfill her own fairy tale dream. They embrace on the dance floor, with Karen flustering over the proximity and Elizabeth's scent. The world melts away into a backdrop of blooming flowers as they enjoy their moment together. High above on the balcony, Prince Lux watches the scene with a predatory smirk. He rudely shoves a male student aside, commanding him to move out of the way. Ignoring a question about his destination, he strides purposefully toward the dance floor. A dangerous glint appears in his eyes as he declares his intention to claim something for himself. He targets the dancing pair, announcing that he is going to pluck a lovely flower that has caught his fancy. A polished black shoe strikes the pavement, announcing the arrival of a significant figure. Prince Lux strides into the venue with his entourage, wearing a smirk of absolute arrogance. The female students erupt into excited chatter, instantly recognizing the royal visitor. Squeals of delight fill the air as the girls swoon over his bad boy reputation and dreamy looks. Lux walks past the adoring crowd, ignoring their desperate pleas to be whisked away. He coldly orders a student to step aside, declaring that she is merely an obstacle in his path. Meanwhile, Elizabeth and Karen focus on the buffet, ignoring the commotion to enjoy their meal. Elizabeth sneakily tosses a piece of meat-wrapped asparagus to her familiar, initiating a secret game. The black cat leaps into the air and catches the treat with a joyous cry of delicious victory. Elizabeth feeds him another bite with a fork, while Karen watches the chaotic scene with amusement. The cat complains about the vegetables, but Elizabeth celebrates her third successful feeding win. Karen remarks that a peaceful eating contest is a nice change from Elizabeth's usual violent outbursts. Elizabeth insists she is a pacifist who prioritizes health, though her familiar strongly disagrees. A sudden presence looms behind them, announcing itself with a dramatic sound effect. Prince Lux appears in a shower of sparkles, striking a pose intended to dazzle the girls. He steps closer with a heavy thud, invading their personal space with zero hesitation. Karen points out the approaching sparkly man, confused by his bizarre and intense aura. The cat gasps in horror, recognizing the newcomer as Lux the Earth Knight. He panics, realizing that Lux is another capture target like Reyes and sensing impending doom. The cat explains that Lux is the party's main tank who uses the power of love for defense. He adds that Lux is a pompous playboy destined to fall for Karen in the original game plot. The cat notes that since the story has diverged, the scripted wall slam event shouldn't be happening. Ignoring the plot divergence, Lux slams his hand against the wall, trapping Elizabeth. He leans in with a smoldering gaze and declares that she shall be his new ladylove. Elizabeth responds immediately with a devastating punch that sends him flying across the room. Nearby, Lux's lackeys hold Karen captive, leering that they will keep her out of the prince's way. Elizabeth vanishes from her spot, moving with blinding speed to intercept the new threat. She slams into the lackeys with terrifying force, launching them into the air like ragdolls. Karen screams in shock as the impact sends her captors flying away from her. The lackeys crash into the courtyard fountain, shattering the stone and splashing water everywhere. Elizabeth lands in a superhero crouch, her dress fluttering as the chaos settles around her. She apologizes to her stunned cat for the sudden interruption of their meal. With a playful peace sign, she cheerfully admits that she couldn't help but punch the prince. The cat buries his face in his paws, wailing in despair over her assault on royalty. Elizabeth's footsteps echo in the hallway as the narration reveals she was sent to the disciplinary committee for hitting the prince. Karen screams in denial, insisting that Elizabeth's actions were justified self-defense and she did nothing wrong. Reyes laughs heartily, pointing out that regardless of intent, she still sent the third prince flying. He swings his massive sword, praising the insane strength of the girl he aims to surpass. Karen snaps at him to stop following her, but Reyes claims he knows she is planning a surprise visit. Reyes draws his blade with a feral grin, offering to use brute force to silence the prince permanently. Horrified, Karen denies the murder plot and clarifies she only wants to negotiate a reduced penalty. Reyes sighs at the boring plan while Karen worries about Elizabeth facing the trial alone. The scene shifts to the imposing academic disciplinary committee, where Elizabeth stands judgment. A heavy silence fills the grand hall as the committee members glare down at the defendant. The monocle-wearing prosecutor proposes expulsion, labeling her action as lèse-majesté against the crown. He slams the desk, arguing that the cartoonish impact sounds were evidence of terrorism against the royal family. Chaos erupts as members argue, with one demanding expulsion and another suggesting extenuating circumstances. The head silences the room, accusing the defender of self-preservation before the royal family intervenes. Elizabeth maintains a stoic front, but the cat notices her trembling and whispering nervously. She forces a pained smile, noting that this is her second expulsion hearing in just 4 days. Tears welling in her eyes, she resigns herself to her fate and prays for a mere suspension. The cat sighs at her lack of spirit, noting she only learned to aim for the stomach next time. Suddenly, the heavy doors behind Elizabeth burst open with a thunderous boom. Meanwhile, at the high-class infirmary, Karen begs the guards to let her see the prince. The stern guard refuses entry, stating Prince Lux is resting and cannot be disturbed without an appointment. Karen bows desperately, but the guards remain unmoved by her pleas to see royalty. Frustration mounts as Karen realizes her polite approach is getting her nowhere. Reyes slams his hand against the wall, smugly introducing himself as the commander's son and Lux's childhood friend. He explains the noble tradition of assigning children as playmates to the royal family. With a wicked grin, Reyes claims to know 11 years' worth of dirt on the prince. He threatens to broadcast the story of Lux's first heartbreak at age 4 to the entire academy. Terrified of the scandal, the guards panic and immediately unlock the doors to let them in. The group bursts into the room, finding the prince looking surprisingly unharmed. Lux sits on a sofa sipping tea, disappointed that his visitors aren't beaten up and curled into a ball. He sparkles vainly, explaining that as an Earth Knight candidate, he had the royal healer fix his face immediately. Ignoring his narcissism, Karen urgently presses him to agree to her request. Lux is genuinely shocked to hear that the lovely dark-haired maiden is being expelled without his knowledge. Back at the hearing, the committee head prepares to finalize the vote for expulsion. Elizabeth freezes in terror as the head declares his intent to remove her from the academy. He asks for any objections, his silence implying the decision is already made. A loud, booming objection shatters the solemn atmosphere of the trial. Lux bursts into the hall with Karen, demanding to know who dares expel his beloved for a trivial accident. Karen leans over the railing with a beaming smile, announcing she has come to save the day. The black cat wipes sweat from his brow, breathing a heavy sigh of relief that the ordeal has finally passed. A flashback reveals that Elizabeth was hauled before the disciplinary committee to face trial for assaulting a royal prince. She smiles innocently while holding her terrified familiar, secretly plotting to destroy the judge's hairlines with magic. The cat munches on a treat, shuddering at the thought of the serious charges she barely managed to avoid. Back in the present, Elizabeth enjoys a cup of tea and graciously thanks St. Karen for ensuring everything turned out all right. She closes her eyes and takes a peaceful sip, noting that despite the acquittal, one nagging problem still remains. The camera zooms out to reveal a lovely picnic setup, completely ignoring the chaotic battle raging in the background. While the girls enjoy their tea, terrifying screeches and the sounds of violence echo from the nearby lake. A massive wyvern swoops down from the sky, its jaws gaping open to unleash a devastating attack. Reyes stands his ground against the beast, shouting at the cowardly lizard to stop flying and fight him head-on. He brandishes his sword at the circling flock, taunting them for staying out of his lethal range. The wyvern accepts the challenge and dives straight for him, breathing a stream of fire as it descends. Reyes curses as he dodges the blast, complaining that relying on long-range breath attacks is cheating. Elizabeth laughs heartily at his struggle, enjoying the front-row seat to the chaotic spectacle. A flashback returns to the trial's conclusion, where heavy doors slam open to interrupt the proceedings. Prince Lux strides into the room with his signature sparkle, commanding everyone present to rejoice at his arrival. Karen clasps her hands together and happily announces that the Academy has agreed to drop the charges. Lux congratulates Elizabeth on her freedom, though she remains skeptical of the mostly innocent verdict. He explains that instead of severe punishment, she has been sentenced to perform community service. Leaning in with a smirk, he reveals that her penance will be to go on a romantic date with him. He strikes a flamboyant pose, laughing that spending a day with him is a reward rather than a punishment. Elizabeth and her cat recoil in horror as he clarifies that it is officially classified as royal family outreach. Lux grabs her chin and declares she is his property, vowing never to let her escape his grasp. Elizabeth responds instantly with a thunderous punch, sending the prince flying across the room once again. Lux slams into the wall but groans in pleasure, threatening a much harder task if she refuses the date. He reveals the alternative punishment is to exterminate a dangerous flock of wyverns nesting in the southern forest. Elizabeth's eyes sparkle with joy at the prospect of violence, leaving her companions completely dumbfounded. Lux laughs maniacally, warning that these airborne monsters are too dangerous even for top-tier adventurers. Without a moment's hesitation, Elizabeth sprints out the door to kill the monsters, choosing violence over romance. Lux is left gaping in shock as his plan to corner her into a date backfires completely. Back at the picnic, Karen chides Elizabeth for hitting royalty, but Elizabeth only regrets holding back her strength. Elizabeth remarks that the wyverns were disappointingly weak, having defeated them with a single punch. Karen blushes and clutches her chest, overwhelmed by her friend's terrifyingly overpowered nature. Elizabeth laughs off the praise, claiming she actually struggles with flying enemies because they try to carry her away. She glances toward the battlefield, noting that Reyes insisted on handling the rest but is taking forever. Elizabeth announces she made lunch for him, prompting Karen to praise her unexpected ladylike skills. As she wonders when Reyes will finish, she realizes that the timeline of events is starting to drift. She recalls that this specific wyvern extermination quest was supposed to happen much later in the game's story. An ominous shadow falls over the mountain, signaling the arrival of a threat far greater than simple wyverns. They describes the approach of the Wings of Despair, the true ruler of the skies. A massive, demonic silhouette rises from the flames, spreading its terrifying wings to blot out the sun. The dark dragon Deathvern reveals itself, turning a simple extermination mission into a legendary boss battle. A pack of vicious mini-raptors growls menacingly in the forest clearing, seeking prey. Reyes announces he will give everyone a boost as he prepares for battle. Karen focuses her magical energy to cast a high-level holy spell. A miraculous light erupts from her staff, enveloping Reyes and Renard in a powerful buff. Renard thanks her as his attack and defense stats rise significantly. Reyes grins with excitement, his stats boosted with critical hit chance added to the mix. He stomps the ground and dashes forward to start the extermination with a roar. The cat observes the event, noting they need to defeat mini-raptors to clear rank 1. Luna reflects that the game originally had a date event here, but the plot has shifted to a quest. She realizes the sequence is broken since the wyverns are already gone, leaving Reyes to clear the small fry. Karen runs through the forest, clutching her staff with a determined expression. A raptor lunges at her, jaws wide open to attack the vulnerable healer. Karen recalls Elizabeth's order to stay back but hesitates on how to act in the face of danger. She steels her resolve, reminding herself she came to the academy to get stronger. Shouting that she isn't here to play, she swings her staff at the monster to defend herself. The cat watches with relief, noting that this development follows the original plot perfectly. Luna cheers for Karen's growth and warns Elizabeth not to interfere with the canon event. Elizabeth ignores the mood and shouts confusing combat advice while Karen struggles to fend off the beast. The monster snaps at Karen, but Elizabeth intervenes with a sudden burst of invisible pressure. The raptor freezes in midair, sensing a terrifying presence far greater than itself. Elizabeth stands behind Karen, emitting a deathly aura that manifests as a giant skull. The monster foams at the mouth and collapses, its heart stopped by sheer terror. Reyes arrives to see birds fleeing the forest in a panic. Karen is shaken by the ordeal while the cat notes that every living creature is running away. Elizabeth apologizes for leaking her murderous aura, but the cat scolds her for lacking self-restraint. Night falls over the forest campsite as the group settles down. Elizabeth sits by the fire, radiating gloom over her failure to hold back. Karen smiles sadly and mutters that she really is pathetic for needing help. Elizabeth calls her name, and Karen admits she feels like she is no good at all. Elizabeth asks her directly why she is trying so hard to become stronger. Karen reveals she is an orphan who had nowhere to go before her powers were found. She explains that the Church of Stars took her in and discovered her light magic. She wanted to become a saint to repay their kindness for raising her. Looking down, she confesses she doesn't know if she can actually fulfill that expectation anymore. Elizabeth interrupts her self-pity, bluntly asking if she is still healthy. Listing that her limbs move and organs are intact, Elizabeth declares there is no reason to give up. Elizabeth holds Karen's hands and promises to take her to even greater heights if she just leaves it to her. Karen blushes, entranced by Elizabeth's confidence and promise of support. Reyes suddenly smashes his head into the ground, begging Elizabeth to train him too. Hands break the water's surface with a gentle splash as the girls enjoy their secret night bath. A dark mountain silhouette looms against the night sky, accompanied by the whistling wind. Karen gazes up in wonder, her eyes sparkling as she takes in the breathtaking scenery. She marvels at the beauty of the hot spring, noting how the lake's surface perfectly reflects the starry night sky. Reflecting on the sudden trip, she recalls how Elizabeth abruptly dragged her along with a cheerful promise of a bath. Elizabeth relaxes in the water, preaching that a good soak is essential for maintaining both health and beauty. Karen flushes with embarrassment and demands Elizabeth put her leg down, scolding her for being so improper. Elizabeth explains that she discovered this secluded spring by pure chance during her childhood adventures. She casually mentions that she found the spot while climbing the mountain to hunt down a dragon. Karen stammers in disbelief, asking for clarification on the absurd claim that she fought a dragon. Elizabeth cheerfully describes exterminating the beast like a common pest because it kept stealing the local cattle. She smiles warmly at her terrified friend, assuring Karen that she will soon be strong enough to do the same. Elizabeth presents a mental hierarchy of strength, leaving Karen feeling like worthless trash compared to even the weakest monsters. Karen mutters that she should have fought a dragon first to build courage, questioning the absurdity of her situation. A sudden, heavy thud echoes through the area, interrupting their conversation with an ominous vibration. Elizabeth's expression shifts to a predatory grin as she senses a powerful presence and tells Karen to move. They scramble out of the water, with Karen panicking and asking where they are going in such a hurry. A massive, skeletal dragon peers over the mountain ridge, its hollow eyes fixed on them with a murderous gaze. Karen freezes in terror at the sight, while Elizabeth casually notes that a new tenant has moved in. The dragon roars at the intruders, but Elizabeth declares that this monster is the perfect opponent for them. The beast crashes down onto the rocky terrain, confronting the girls who now stand fully clad in their battle gear. The massive creature lets out a terrifying breath, its sheer presence dominating the landscape. Elizabeth identifies the monster as the dark dragon Deathvern, a creature far superior to a normal dragon. She describes it as an uninvited guest from the Great Forest, though her cat simply calls it a terrible threat. The dragon prepares a devastating breath attack, revealing itself as a special disaster-class monster that must be eliminated. Elizabeth casts a protective barrier around Karen, revealing that this catastrophic beast will serve as Karen's training partner. With a confident smile, Elizabeth announces the start of their lesson and prepares to engage the lethal foe.
Karen screams in terror, begging Lady Elizabeth to flee as the cat familiar warns of their impending doom. The cat familiar panics upon identifying the dark dragon, Deathvern, confirming the situation is dire. Revealing a chilling connection, the familiar explains that Deathvern is one of the 6 supreme dragons and essentially another version of Elizabeth herself. The narrative shifts to the game's mechanics, noting that in 18 of the 24 story branches, Elizabeth becomes the supreme demon lord after the current one falls. While Elizabeth died early in some timelines, the familiar reveals that in the remaining branches, Deathvern took the throne as the supreme demon dragon lord of darkness. Despite not yet reaching its final evolution, the dragon radiates an overwhelming aura that chills the air. The familiar questions Elizabeth's sanity, demanding to know if she truly believes she stands a chance against such a monstrous foe. Deathvern lets out a deafening roar that echoes through the canyon. A massive shockwave ripples through the air as the beast shifts its weight. Elizabeth launches herself into the air with a sudden, powerful movement. She glides through the sky, positioning herself for a counteroffensive. With a sharp flick of her hand, Elizabeth readies a magical strike. The dragon's massive tail thumps against the earth as Elizabeth darts through the air. She strikes with incredible precision, causing a massive smash that rocks the dragon's armored hide. The impact sends a jolt through the area, surprising those watching the battle. A blinding flash of light erupts as the confrontation intensifies. Deathvern exhales a massive blast of dark energy that carves through the landscape. Reyes conjures a defensive barrier to shield a terrified Karen, while the cat familiar watches in shock. Elizabeth maneuvers through the dissipating energy with ethereal grace. She accelerates toward the dragon, leaving a blur of motion in her wake. Deathvern looms with its jaws open, ready to crush the small but persistent intruder. Elizabeth spins through the air, her dress fluttering as she completes a high-speed aerial rotation. Descending toward her target, she prepares to deliver a finishing blow. Elizabeth unleashes a powerful kick that creates a massive impact, driving the dragon's head into the ground. The force of the strike causes a violent crash, sending debris flying as the dragon is pinned to the earth. Elizabeth lands softly on a nearby cliff edge, her purple hair swaying in the night breeze. She wears a confident, knowing smirk as she looks down at the struggling beast. Looking back at her fallen opponent, Elizabeth stands composed as the wind howls around her. The cat familiar is left speechless, forced to admit that Elizabeth's strength is absolutely monstrous. Karen breathes a sigh of relief, though her eyes remain filled with tears of worry for her mistress. The dragon begins to growl from the crater, refusing to stay down after the initial assault. Wind swirls around the battlefield as Elizabeth maintains her defensive stance against the rising dragon. Reyes keeps the shield active, gritting his teeth as the pressure of the dragon's aura increases again. The dragon's growl deepens into a low, menacing rumble that vibrates through the earth. The beast grits its teeth in fury, preparing its most dangerous technique. Elizabeth tells Karen not to close her eyes, while the familiar continues to shout in concern. She casually reminds Karen that as her senior disciple, she should be watching the technique carefully. Reyes agrees, telling Karen there is nothing wrong with praying but she must keep her eyes open for this lesson. Reyes admits he has no idea why their master brought Karen to such a dangerous place. He emphasizes that it would be a waste to miss the spectacle unfolding before them. Reyes declares this epic battle as one for the ages while the dragon lets out a final, desperate cry. The dragon's eye dilates in a moment of pure, primal intensity. A massive, skeletal doom cloud begins to manifest over the canyon, signaling a terrifying shift in the fight. The dragon roars as a giant skeletal head materializes, its jaws opening to consume everything. Reyes realizes with a start that the dragon is attempting an instantaneous kill spell. The massive skeletal phantom looms over Elizabeth, threatening to end the battle in a single strike. The familiar panics at the sight of the death spell, but Elizabeth stands her ground against the towering skull. With a single, concentrated punch, Elizabeth shatters the skeletal apparition into fragments. The dark magic cracks and dissipates under the sheer force of her physical blow. Elizabeth scoffs at the dragon's attempt, mocking the idea that such a spell would ever work on her. She stretches out her arm and announces that it is finally her turn to go on the offensive. Smiling broadly against the backdrop of the red moon, Elizabeth promises to pay the dragon back in full. A massive, crushing force slams down onto the dragon, pinning it flat against the ground. Skeletal hands suddenly erupt from the earth, grabbing the dragon's limbs and tail to drag it down. The dragon struggles and shrieks as it begins to sink into the ground, held fast by the summoned undead hands. Massive skeletal arms lash out and strike the beast, overwhelming its defenses with sheer volume. The dragon growls in pain as the terrain itself seems to turn against its massive bulk. Elizabeth looks down and remarks that the pest actually showed some impressive survival instincts. She notes that the dragon was clearly projecting murderous intent toward Karen earlier in the fight. A flashback reveals a younger Elizabeth and Karen at a hot spring, where Karen let out a startled eep. Elizabeth tightens her grip and declares that the enemy shall die 1,000 deaths for its insolence. A massive, skeletal face looms over a monster, casting a shadow of pure dread as a deep rumble shakes the earth. The creature shrieks in agony as a blinding flash of light erupts from within its maw. Bone-like appendages pin the beast to the ground while it screams in a desperate attempt to resist. A violent explosion tears through the area, signaling a devastating turn in the battle. Realizing the monster attacked itself just to escape, the warrior curses the creature's tenacity as it flees into the mist. Wounded and breathing heavily, the dragon-like beast growls while trying to stabilize itself on the rocky terrain. Acknowledging the creature's refusal to die, the observer notes that such resilience is exactly what one expects from a dragon. Overwhelmed by the terrifying display of power, the small black cat cries out in pure fear. Terrified by the horrifying scene, the cat explains that once a dragon marks its prey, it will pursue them to the ends of the earth. Disturbed by the dragon's inexplicable focus on those two, the observer notes that Elizabeth has entered a full, terrifying murder mode. Panicking over the deviation, the narrator screams that this ultra-strong boss should not be appearing this early in the game. Looking over a complex flowchart of destiny, the cat realizes the progress of the story has gone completely out of whack. A sudden realization hits the black cat, causing it to gasp in shock at the shifting reality. Staring into the void, the cat wonders if the creature's presence is a direct result of the timeline's instability. Amidst the dragon's roars, the observer questions if the world is using force to eliminate the source of all these deviations. As another explosion rocks the battlefield, the narrator wonders if the world is attempting to restore the proper course of events. Looking upward with wide, shocked eyes, the girl watches as the wind whips around her in a violent gust. Standing before a multi-headed, grotesque dragon, she questions if the story itself is trying to correct its own errors. Trapped within a swirling vortex, the young girl and her cat companion look on in absolute disbelief. Amidst a powerful whoosh of energy, the girl gapes at the sudden transformation occurring before her eyes. She recalls the legends of the ruler of all monsters, a destroyer depicted in church murals who was sealed away after a fierce battle. The terrifying truth is revealed as the demon lord manifests in its full, horrific glory. Clenching her hand to her chest, the girl realizes this is the fated enemy the saint is destined to fight against. A voice interjects to clarify that this monster is actually something far more dangerous than what the girl imagines. The narrator identifies the beast as Deathern, the supreme demon dragon lord of darkness. It is revealed that the strongest boss in the game has appeared in a place where it should not even exist. The dragon prepares to eliminate Elizabeth, who is viewed as the anomaly that has derailed the entire plot. Elizabeth sneers at the beast, calling it a debugger sent by the world and mocking its attempt to win by simply growing larger. The dragon responds with a wicked, toothy grin, showing no fear of its opponent. Elizabeth stares back with a focused and determined expression, ready for the next move. With a sudden twirl, the dragon lashes out while the others watch the confrontation from the safety of a nearby cliff. Reaching out her hand in a desperate gesture, the girl screams as the dragon launches an attack. A massive beam of energy erupts from the dragon, clashing against Elizabeth's defensive barrier with a thunderous boom. The force of the explosion sends a shockwave across the landscape as the observers brace themselves against the cliffside. The sound of cracking glass fills the air as Elizabeth's barrier begins to shatter under the dragon's overwhelming power. With a final, sharp sound, the protective shield completely shatters into countless fragments. A blinding light and a powerful impact rock the battlefield as the dragon's attack connects. The dragon's massive claw swipes through the air, sending a powerful shockwave toward its target. Elizabeth watches in surprise as the beast's giant limbs crash into the ground with a heavy thud. Noticing something strange on her arms, Elizabeth gasps in confusion as a new power begins to resonate. From within a cloud of energy, a transformed Karen emerges with her arms outstretched, surprising Elizabeth. Karen wobbles and then collapses to the ground from exhaustion as the others tumble back from the receding energy. Elizabeth catches the unconscious Karen, letting out a sigh of relief while the air buzzes with leftover magical energy. Elizabeth smiles warmly at her friend, whispering that she expected no less from her. Though she cast a compulsory defensive spell, Elizabeth is impressed that Karen pulled off such a powerful move on her own. Pieces of the dragon's body begin to crumble and sizzle as it suffers from the aftereffects of the battle. Elizabeth holds Karen close, looking back toward the wounded beast with a cold, unwavering gaze. A light bulb appears over Elizabeth's head as she watches the dragon struggle to stand in the distance. Elizabeth mocks the black dragon, suggesting that its massive size might actually be a downside in its current poor shape. Elizabeth declares she will show no mercy, comparing the dragon to a spongy cream puff filled with nothing but hot air. Looming over the dragon once more, Elizabeth reminds the beast that this is the second time it has dared to try something. She growls with lethal intent, stating that the dragon has made a grave mistake by trying to harm Karen. A spectral, skeletal figure emerges above the dragon, preparing to deliver a final, crushing blow. Elizabeth yanks the creature toward her with magical force, catching it completely off guard. The dragon screams in terror as Elizabeth prepares to end the fight once and for all. A glowing heart-like core is ripped from the dragon's body as it shrieks in final agony. Elizabeth's shadow falls over the beast's eye as she exerts a final crushing squeeze. The dragon lets out one last, long scream of pain as its life force is completely extinguished. Bidding the beast farewell, Elizabeth promises to make good use of its flesh to achieve even greater health. Elizabeth embraces Karen, promising her a fill of someone special while Karen groans in a state of dazed exhaustion. Confused by Karen's glowing arm, Elizabeth and a companion question the nature of the strange phenomenon. A voice explains that the glowing mark is a stigma, a divine sign from God manifesting only on those worthy of being a saint. The black cat reveals to Elizabeth that the marking is indeed a stigma as she addresses him. The onlookers marvel at Karen's divinity, noting that such a brilliant glow is a miracle far beyond the capabilities of a typical level saint in training. An internal monologue reveals that Karen is a level saint in training whose stigma has activated prematurely compared to the original game's timeline. Deeply troubled, the observer wonders if Karen is another anomaly alongside Elizabeth that the narrative story must eventually purge. The scene shifts to the Zelvia Magic Academy where a grand celebration is held in the banquet hall. A large, dark dragon is revealed as the central focus of the event's celebration. A formal announcement begins at the Zelvia Magic Academy banquet hall to address the student body. Chapter Celebration officially opens with a dramatic presentation of various dragon heads as trophies. A speaker commands the crowd's attention, revealing that a dangerous dragon had been roaming the academy's territory. The orator describes dragons as bringers of calamity that would have caused untold suffering if left alive. To the crowd's amazement, the speaker announces that someone discovered and slew the massive beast before it could strike. The speaker shocks the audience by revealing that the slayer is an anonymous student currently attending the academy. Disbelief ripples through the crowd as they realize a mere student achieved a feat that usually requires knights or teachers. Students chatter excitedly about the immense damage past dragon attacks caused, acknowledging that slaying one is a monumental feat. Amidst the cheers for the true hero, a bashful student tries to downplay the fuss while others swear to brag about knowing the slayer. A girl asks the student if she is truly sure about remaining anonymous despite the overnight fame that comes with being a dragon slayer. Elizabeth declines the fame, claiming that nothing good comes from standing out, while her companion reminds her of her role in the battle. After being told her contribution was big enough to earn an embarrassing nickname, Karen humbly tries to explain her desperate actions. A red-haired boy mumbles through potential titles like White Angel of Judgment, while a companion recalls the grief he has caused. Elizabeth stands silently in the chattering crowd while holding her drink. The speaker smiles and calls for everyone to raise their glasses in a toast to the new dragon slayers. The toast is dedicated to the maidenly dark dragon punishers, as the speaker addresses his beloved. Elizabeth is so shocked by the ridiculous title that she immediately spits out her drink in surprise. The crowd erupts in confusion over the strange name, Maidenly Dark Dragon Punishers. Shocked faces fill the room as everyone reacts with a collective shout of, "Wah?" Students debate the title, joking that these maidens must be as strong as gorillas or perhaps represent a group of girls. The speaker smirks enigmatically, refusing to reveal the Slayer's identity just yet while guaranteeing an eventual reveal. As the speaker vows to make that girl he is suddenly interrupted by a violent pow and an explosive impact. Confusion reigns as students wonder if wind magic was used, while Elizabeth notices a mysterious fruity smell in the air. Elizabeth smirks and calls someone a mad dog after realized grapes were flung at the speaker in the blink of an eye. A dark aura Elizabeth smiles menacingly and asks if she should bury the person headfirst later for giving them that nickname. A flaming bird appears in the window, claiming to be the one who actually gave them both that specific title. The bird flaps its wings and cheekily asks the group if they like the new nicknames. The group stares in awe at the talking bird that appears to be made of fire. Mr. Reyes explains that the creature is a phoenix, which serves as the headmaster's messenger bird. The phoenix delivers an invitation for the three of them to visit the headmaster's office as a reward. As the bird flaps away, it promises to prepare tea and continue the conversation in the office. The trio decides to head out, though one member remains preoccupied with questioning the headmaster. As they walk, Elizabeth continues her dark internal debate about whether the headmaster prefers to be buried headfirst or feet first. Karen frantically tells Elizabeth that no burying is allowed and that she can't target the headmaster. Despite the protests, Elizabeth continues her sinister, mew-heh laughter while walking toward the meeting. A narrator notes that this event where Headmaster Zandalf summons them also occurred in the original game. It is revealed that Headmaster Zandalf is one of the 7 great sages and might actually stand a chance against Elizabeth. The trio arrives at the headmaster's office where they are told they may enter as the story begins to correct itself. Elizabeth claps her hands together with a sharp sound as she prepares to enter. Magical energy buzzes and crackles around Elizabeth as she moves toward the door. A sudden shum sound effect highlights a surge of power or movement. Elizabeth enters the room with a confident look, her dark energy manifesting visually behind her. Headmaster Zandalf sits on his throne with his phoenix, greeting the students with a calm, "I see that you're here." Karen screams in terror, begging Lady Elizabeth to wait a second before she does something drastic. The trio walks down a long, ornate hallway toward their destination. The massive doors to the office creak open with a heavy FW sound. One student wonders what the headmaster wants while another replies with a mysterious, "Who knows?" The headmaster is described as a monster who helped defeat the previous demon lord over a century ago. A flashback shows the legendary hero as the vanguard of the Saints' party, clearing the path to the demon lord. While he is a living legend, the student candidly adds that outside of his history, the headmaster is just a senile and sleazy old codger. The narrative concludes by reaffirming that despite his eccentricities, the headmaster is indeed a living legend. Smirking with dark intent, Elizabeth Maxwell readies her shovel and declares that someone is about to die because of her feline companion's actions. Dismissing the cat's concerns about murder, she clarifies that she merely intends to give the target a little burial as punishment for a terrible nickname. A sudden, heavy thud echoes through the hallway, catching a young girl off guard as a pained grunt rings out from nearby. The group sprints down a long, ornate corridor toward the source of the sound as a powerful gust of wind rushes past them. Worried that the headmaster might be suffering from his recurring back trouble, the students rush to investigate the commotion. They burst into a massive library only to find the elderly headmaster collapsed on the floor with massive claw marks torn across his back. The group watches in horror as the headmaster twitches and groans in agony while lying amidst his scattered belongings. Elizabeth is stunned by the sight while a young girl named Karen prepares her magic to heal the fallen man. Suspicious of the timing, the cat stares intently at Elizabeth, who breaks out in a nervous sweat under the scrutiny. Elizabeth insists she hasn't done anything yet, while the cat retorts that her defense is exactly what a guilty person would say. Suddenly, a violent burst of dark energy erupts in the room, signaling the arrival of a new presence. A mysterious, demonic woman with pointed ears and a jagged mask appears, wearing a wicked grin and provocative leather attire. The students are frozen in shock and confusion at the sudden appearance of this intimidating stranger. Reacting with lightning speed, the male student Reyes throws a powerful punch that shatters the surrounding furniture. An explosion of dust and debris fills the air as the force of the strike levels everything in its path. Reyes stands his ground, glowing with aura as he demands to know the identity of the intruder who just bypassed his attack. Realizing his physical strike passed right through her, Reyes gasps as he understands he is fighting an illusion. The demon woman effortlessly phases behind him, mocking his speed while acknowledging his status as a Flame Knight candidate. She delivers a brutal blow that sends Reyes crashing into the floor, critiquing his pitiful lack of control despite his raw strength. Stepping over the defeated boy, she sneers that someone with such beast-like movements could never hope to defeat a dragon. The intruder is revealed to be clad in dark magic, possessing striking black hair and a physique that radiates a sinister power. Elizabeth stares in wide-eyed disbelief as the woman questions if she is the prospective saint of light. Looming over them, the demon woman's presence demands to know why a creature of her kind has infiltrated their sanctum. She reveals that the dragon Deathfern, whose head they used as a trophy, was actually an elite youth from the Demon Lord's army. Warning that the Demon Lord's revival is imminent, she notes how inconceivable it is that a mere child managed to fell such a beast. Declaring her mission to nip all potential threats in the bud, she prepares to execute the students where they stand. The demon woman leaps into the air with a powerful whoosh, aiming a devastating kick directly at the young girl's head. Disappointed by the girl's slow reaction, the intruder awards her 0 points and concludes she isn't the threat she's looking for. A binding spell suddenly activates, surrounding the attacker with a magical freeze that halts her mid-motion. The magical energy swirls around the demon woman's legs, momentarily trapping her in place. While the intruder finds herself unable to move, Elizabeth expresses her fury that Karen was insulted with a score of 0. Elizabeth's shovel begins to glow with an intense, threatening light as her patience for the mysterious attacker completely evaporates. With a sharp crack of energy, the tension in the room reaches a breaking point as Elizabeth prepares her counterattack. Standing her ground, Elizabeth refuses to overlook the violence and insults committed against her friends. She demands the intruder confess her identity immediately if she wants to avoid being buried alive right then and there. The cat panics internally, noting that Elizabeth is actually the one committing acts of violence now, though he decides it's a bad time to mention it. Staring blankly at the scene, Elizabeth processes the revelation that their attacker is a legitimate demon. Meanwhile, Karen focuses her light magic on the headmaster, causing his wounds to glow as the healing process begins. The headmaster sits up, identifying the woman as a servant of the demon lord and the primary reason their academy was established. Relieved that the story hasn't been derailed by his death, the cat watches as Karen successfully mends the old man's injuries. The headmaster bows his head in gratitude, thanking Elizabeth Maxwell for protecting him against such a formidable foe. Elizabeth's face contorts with frustration as the cat mocks her, noting it's hard to bury someone while they are busy bowing in thanks. Moving with surprising vigor, the headmaster claims the healing has made him feel 10 years younger despite Karen's warnings to rest. The old man revels in the warmth of the girl's proximity until Elizabeth's shovel looms over him with a threatening squish. Elizabeth slams her shovel into the ground with a massive swoosh, creating a giant crater to signal her displeasure. Sensing the headmaster's perverted thoughts, Elizabeth declares it is burying time as the old man pleads for her to wait. The headmaster quickly shifts his focus back to the enemy, warning the students not to let their guard down yet. The demon woman bursts into a mocking laugh, finding amusement in the chaotic interactions of the humans. Elizabeth is caught off guard by a sudden sound, her eyes wide with renewed alarm. The demon reveals her plan was to strike while their guard was down, but she admits the great sage threw a wrench into her scheme. With a sinister grin, she begins to dissolve into shadows, promising that the fight is far from over. In a puff of smoke, the intruder vanishes completely, leaving Elizabeth standing alone with her shovel in the empty space. Karen exclaims in shock, unable to believe the demon managed to break free from Elizabeth's powerful binding spell. Retreating into the darkness, the demon woman gloats about the valuable intelligence she gathered regarding the brat who defeated Deathfern. She reflects on the dark magic girl's unusual attributes and seemingly endless reserve of magic power. Reappearing briefly to haunt Elizabeth's senses, she whispers a chilling question about whether the girl is actually human. The demon critiques Elizabeth's self-taught dark magic, scoring her a measly 40 points for her lacking technique. Dark energy pulses through the air as the intruder's presence continues to linger like a bad omen. Taunting Elizabeth one last time, she points out that the girl's technique is far too unrefined to be effective. The demon woman boasts that Elizabeth will never land a hit as long as she continues to shift between spatial phases. Towering over Elizabeth, the masked demoness boasts that her deep knowledge of dark magic's essence guarantees a victory decided before the battle even began. Unfazed by the villain's posturing, Elizabeth simply sighs in exasperation at the redundant lecture. Declaring the demon's endless blathering to be honestly annoying, Elizabeth prepares to counter with a far more practical demonstration. Stepping into a combat stance, Elizabeth initiates her healthy snow shoveling exercise variation as the air crackles with intense magical pressure. Dashing forward, Elizabeth narrates the first step of her lethal workout, driving the shovel forward while maintaining a safe arm extension to avoid injury. With a heavy thunk, she plants her legs firmly on the ground to prepare for a massive physical upheaval. Using her whole body to lift the weight, Elizabeth delivers a devastating upward strike that shatters the demon's defenses with a massive wah-bomb. The impact of the shovel strike explodes against the demoness, sending a shockwave through the room with a thunderous bam. As the demoness hits the ground with a thud, Elizabeth offers her own lecture on how snow shoveling is an intense exercise on par with marathons or swimming. The demoness reels in agony, unable to believe that Elizabeth used brute force and condensed magic to pierce through the very fabric of space itself. Elizabeth explains that technique can be worried about later, as the first priority is obtaining supreme health forged through rigorous training. Watching from the sidelines, the old wizard chuckles at Elizabeth's unique philosophy before addressing the fallen demon. Flashing a radiant, smug smile, Elizabeth asks the demoness if she has any other flaws she'd like to point out. Gritting her teeth in humiliation, the demoness can only hiss back a comment about Elizabeth's incredibly smug attitude. Standing victoriously with her shovel, Elizabeth chuckles as the chapter title, Fighting the Same Attribute, appears. The demoness struggles to stand, her body trembling under the weight of her defeat while Elizabeth mocks her difficulty in getting back up. The two opponents face off once more across the library floor, the tension rising as the demoness prepares a desperate retaliation. Elizabeth muses to herself that all her dark attribute opponents, from black dragons to demons, certainly are tenacious. Exploding in rage, the demoness calls Elizabeth a cocky little brat and bites her own hand to initiate a forbidden technique. With a grotesque splurt of blood, the demoness declares she will show everyone what happens when a demon finally gets serious. Massive, clawed shadows erupt from the demoness' blood, manifesting into a giant, nightmarish hand that looms over the battlefield. A giant eye opens in the palm of the spectral hand, emitting a blinding flash that leaves the wizard and the other companions in a state of total shock. The cat familiar screams a warning that the demoness is using a demon lord's sealing barrier to imprison Elizabeth. Boasting that this special prison can hold even a demon lord, the villainess laughs as Elizabeth is suddenly enveloped by the spatial trap. The massive clawed hand slams shut around Elizabeth, seemingly sealing her fate within the darkness. Inside the barrier, the demoness' expression shifts to one of sudden shock and confusion as things go sideways. A new presence interrupts the battle, causing a massive surge of power that catches everyone off guard. The rookie saint girl, Karen, appears, her hands clasped in prayer as she desperately tries to maintain a counterseal. Karen's arrival brings a glimmer of hope to the group as she enters the fray with her holy power. Trembling under the strain, Karen apologizes and admits she can't hold back the demoness' power for much longer. Seeing her opening, Elizabeth swings her shovel with a massive WSH and tells Karen it's all right because she's ready to finish this. Elizabeth vows to make good use of the time Karen bought her, realizing that going all out might not be enough. She initiates the healthy snow shoveling exercise, icicle drop, declaring she will multiply her full power by 100. Elizabeth prepares the final blow, her shovel glowing with an overwhelming amount of condensed magical energy. With a massive whoosh, Elizabeth launches her ultimate attack, screaming for the demoness to go down. The demoness tries to block the strike with her giant spectral claw, but the impact of Elizabeth's shovel hits with a bone-shattering wham. The sound of grinding metal and magic fills the air as Elizabeth's shovel overpowers the demon's desperate defense. Watching her ultimate barrier shatter, the demoness screams in disbelief, wondering if Elizabeth is actually stronger than the previous demon lord. A massive explosion rocks the entire library, undoing the distorted space and ending the battle in a blinding flash of light. An ornate medal with a strange crest clinks onto the floor, the only physical remains left of the vanished demoness. Standing in the middle of the restored room, the group looks around in confusion, wondering if the demon simply blew up or vanished. The old wizard notes that the spatial magic has been undone, returning the library to its regular state as the warriors catch their breath. They realize the demoness was skilled enough to escape during the explosion, having originally trapped them in a distorted pocket of space. As Elizabeth stands thinking, her companions are baffled by the fact that the battle was so one-sided despite her opponent being a high-ranking demon. Panicking over Elizabeth's claim of multiplying her power, her ally does the math and realizes her level power essentially makes her a god. Wiping sweat from her forehead, Elizabeth casually dismisses the world-shaking display of power as just a good workout. Her companion screams, desperately wanting to know if her 1x multiplier comment was actually a joke or the terrifying truth. The focus shifts to the medal left behind, which the wizard identifies as bearing the crest of the 7 archdemons. Sitting in the library, the group reacts with horror as the wizard explains that the 7 archdemons are the elite generals of the demon lord's army. History reveals that prior to the great invasions, these sinister archdemons would sneak into the human realm to commit horrific atrocities. The wizard explains that humanity only barely managed to seal them away in the past after paying a tremendously heavy price. He recounts how one archdemon alone was capable of slaughtering entire armies of soldiers on the field of battle. Another was a nightmare that lurked within cities, secretly feeding on human flesh while hiding in the shadows. A third specialized in deception, disguising itself as a human to manipulate people into slaughtering each other from within. The wizard somberly concludes that the seals on these ancient monsters have most likely been broken. He warns that as one seal breaks and absorbs more darkness, the others will inevitably follow until all 7 are free. The ultimate consequence is that the demon lord's own seal in the demon realm will eventually be destroyed as well. The news that the demon lord is returning sends the group into a state of absolute, wide-eyed terror. Elizabeth can only gulp in shock as the reality of a demon lord being a real threat sets in. Processing the video game plot, truth of this world, 14-year-old Elizabeth Maxwell stands completely frozen in pure shock. Stepping away from her usual focus on health and murder, Elizabeth reflects on the widespread rumors regarding the return of the demon lord. Teasingly, the cat observes that Elizabeth seems immensely interested in Karen for some reason or another. Taking a formal stance, Elizabeth asks Miss Karen if she is truly prepared to undertake the task at hand. Karen looks on with a steady, quiet gaze before firmly confirming her resolve with a simple, yes. Steeling herself, Karen explains that she has been ready to fight the demon lord ever since she first enrolled at the academy. Declaring her true identity, Karen vows to fight as the Saint of the Zelvia Royal Academy. Startled by the sudden intensity, Lady Elizabeth calls out Karen's name as a clatter echoes through the room. Narrative requirements for the saint are revealed, stating she must be a pure maiden under 17 who possesses the power of light. Elizabeth questions why Karen must be the one to fight, only to be told it is her unavoidable fate. It is explained that the Book of Prophecies ordains the sealing of the demon lord through the combined powers of the saint and 4 knights. Karen reveals she was raised by the Church of Stars specifically for this purpose and fears her younger sisters would have to take her place if she refused. Karen offers a gentle, heartbreaking smile that masks the weight of the destiny she has accepted. Breaking the heavy atmosphere, Elizabeth grabs Karen's hand and boldly declares she is going along to kick the demon lord's butt. Though Karen tries to protest that it is far too dangerous, Elizabeth refuses to back down from helping her dear friend. Dismissing prophecy and fate as nonsense, Elizabeth proclaims that forging her own destiny is her personal creed. Clenching her fist with determination, Elizabeth insists on helping Karen turn fate on its head. Elizabeth casually adds that a battle with a demon lord counts as a good workout and will surely be beneficial for their health. Karen is left momentarily stunned and confused by Elizabeth's hilariously upbeat perspective on a world-ending conflict. A mysterious, wizard-like figure chuckles to himself while observing the girl's unconventional resolve. The great sage grants his official approval, noting that Elizabeth's participation was the reason he asked her to come there in the first place. The scene shifts as the group prepares for an official pronouncement regarding their next steps. Elizabeth suddenly remembers she still needs to bury someone and worries that if she stops now, Karen might crack her head open with a shovel. With a loud voom, Elizabeth prepares to officially bury her target while a voice cries out in terror. Prince Lux makes a shimmering entrance, naturally assuming he will be taking part in the upcoming battle as the Earth Knight. The scene transitions to the Zelvia Academy tea room where a sudden, da-dun sound effect signals a new arrival. Striking a confident pose with a snap of his fingers, Prince Lux greets the group with a smug, ignoring all social boundaries, Elizabeth wonders what all the noise is about while Lux comments on her confused expression. The tea room descends into a chaotic murmur of clattering dishes and startled gasps as the prince makes his presence known. Amidst a flurry of sparkles and a babam effect, Lux declares that his involvement is already set in stone. Standing tall, Lux vows to protect the saint in his capacity as one of the 4 holy knights of the Sacred Cross. Elizabeth watches in horror as her precious, carefree lunchtime is transformed into a den of decadence in the blink of an eye. The sage asks Elizabeth to serve as a guide and friend to support and train the saint's party. The girls gulp in unison as the sage emphasizes the need to foster bonds between the members of the newly formed group. It is explained that the grand sealing spell requires the 4 elementally chosen knights, flame, water, wind, and earth. While Reyes is confirmed as the Flame Knight, the sage notes that the Earth Knight is likely to be the prince. With a mysterious flash in his eye, the sage promises to send the final candidate to them the following day. A dun sound effect accompanies a wide shot of the group sitting together in the room. Elizabeth frantically stabs at her food, begging that no one do anything rash like burying the prince. Lux misinterprets Elizabeth's internal rage as happiness, smugly claiming they are truly fated to be together. Adopting a more serious tone, the prince expresses his gratitude for the honor of fighting on the front lines as a member of the royal family. Elizabeth looks on skeptically as the prince begins a self-important monologue about his duties. Lux proclaims that the fight against the Demon Lord is a serious battle to safeguard the happiness of the citizens. He argues that the royal family should bear the brunt of the fighting instead of leaving it to young apprentices. Striking a heroic pose, Lux declares he shall shed his blood for his subjects to prove he is a worthy prince. The prince's ego explodes as he imagines reigning as an eternally beloved Kaiser over a nation of beautiful girls. With a whoosh, Lux magnanimously offers to welcome Elizabeth and Karen into his nation as his consorts. The atmosphere shifts abruptly with a plunk as the prince's grandstanding is cut short. A massive splash and a wah echo out as someone takes an unexpected plunge. The tea room erupts in chatter as students wonder why the prince is suddenly flailing in the fountain. Elizabeth defensively claims it isn't like she buried him in a hole, though the cat notes that doesn't make it okay. The black cat reflects on the chaotic nature of the journey they have embarked upon. Despite the chaos, the group realizes the events are starting to match the plot of the original game as they head toward a training arc. A serene image of a massive tree in the center of a lake marks the upcoming event with the second great sage. A beautiful, green-haired which sits among stacks of books, setting the stage for the Undine and the Lost Woods arc. Happily munching on a donut, the cat struggles to remember if this specific event actually exists in the game's lore. The narration continues over a simple munch sound effect as the cat enjoys its snack. A new figure appears, vowing to correct the behavior of a thieving wench who has forgotten her manners. Lady Marianne's followers insist that the black-haired girl's misdeeds against Prince Lux can no longer be ignored. Hiding a sinister smirk behind her fan, Marianne resolves to teach the Princess of Slaughter a lesson and put her in her place. With a final dun, the narrative announces that Marianne, the villainess from the Lux route, has made her entrance. Marianne, the daughter of Duke Ducart, makes a dramatic entrance to confront Elizabeth for her recent audacious behavior. The highborn rival continues her aggressive approach, accusing Elizabeth of overstepping her bounds lately. Standing atop a massive fallen monster, Marianne declares that Elizabeth has exceeded her limits. When questioned about what she is standing on, Marianne cryptically refers to the creature as the storms of life. The group sighs as Marianne explains she was attacked by a forest hell tortoise while trying to avoid standing out. Elizabeth worries about receiving another strange nickname since the local wildlife seems to flee from her presence. Overwhelmed by the absurdity of the situation, the three students suddenly collapse and faint in unison. A black cat observes in shock as the girls lie unconscious beneath a tree while a mysterious figure approaches. Karen returns with a hunted horned rabbit in hand, happily announcing that she will prepare rabbit stew for dinner. The energetic girl greets everyone with a smile, unaware of the chaos that transpired while she was away. Reyes and Karen stand perplexed as they look upon the three fainted students scattered across the forest floor. Reyes jokingly commends Karen for hunting three female students, prompting an immediate and defensive denial. Moving closer to investigate, Reyes notes that one of the unconscious girls looks strangely familiar. Elizabeth begins to twitch and groan as she slowly starts to regain consciousness after her sudden faint. The group gathers around as the girls finally come to, asking if they are uninjured from their ordeal. Waking up in a rage, Elizabeth immediately begins gnashing her teeth and hurling insults at the Princess of Slaughter. While Reyes brings water for the group, a confused Karen asks for the identity of the aggressive stranger. Reyes identifies the girl as Marianne Ducart, the fiancée of Prince Lux, causing the rival to blush and panic. The mention of being a bride triggers a sparkly, idealized image of the prince in the girls' minds. Marianne frantically denies being his wife or spouse, insisting she is still merely his fiancée while shouting at Reyes. Elizabeth continues her verbal assault, pointing a finger and labeling Marianne a wretched princess of slaughter and thievery. A flashback reveals Marianne's role as a cold-hearted rival from the game who sought to obstruct Karen's romance with Lux. The memory depicts Marianne as an ambitious girl who only valued Lux for his royal status and claim to the throne. Back in the present, Elizabeth is momentarily flustered by the tactless brute Reyes before refocusing on her true target. Pinned by the gaze of the others, Marianne huffs and puffs while trying to maintain her composure and dignity. With a sharp glint in her eyes, Elizabeth prepares to take control of the escalating confrontation. Repeating her dramatic introduction, Elizabeth restarts the entire conversation from the beginning with another him. She accuses Marianne of joining the party as a guide solely as a scheme to get closer to Prince Lux. Marianne is visibly shocked by the accusation as Elizabeth claims this was all part of a calculated plot. While Marianne and Karen shake with nerves, Elizabeth demands they stop feigning innocence regarding their intentions. In a formal gesture of challenge, Elizabeth throws her left glove toward her rival to initiate a proper duel. With a snap of her fingers, Marianne commands her 4 knights to come forth and face her opponents. The ground thuds as armored figures emerge to stand behind their employer in a show of force. Marianne boasts that these are worthy warriors recruited with her family's wealth, far superior to the Academy's knights. She dismisses the Academy's protectors as children and labels the common-born saint as little more than a trinket. Confident in her superior might and merit, Marianne officially challenges the group to a duel to settle the matter. The terms are set. When Marianne wins, she will have Prince Lux transferred to her own squad immediately. Elizabeth reels from being called a vixen, feeling a sense of gloom as the weight of the challenge sinks in. Marianne declares that this duel will serve as a definitive measure of whose love for Prince Lux is truly stronger. The absurdity of the love duel leaves the onlookers shouting in disbelief at the strange turn of events. As the next chapter begins, Marianne's hired mercenaries prepare to engage, claiming they are fighting for their employer. The lead mercenary sneers at the helpless girl, warning Elizabeth to prepare for a little bit of pain. The two sides face off in the clearing, with Reyes and the others watching the tense standoff from the sidelines. Laughing mockingly, Elizabeth offers Marianne one last chance to apologize and swear to keep her hands off the prince. Calling an end to the nonsense, Elizabeth unleashes a powerful beam of magical energy from her outstretched hand. The armored knights find themselves suddenly burdened by a crushing weight as the gravity spell takes effect. One mercenary tries to laugh it off, claiming a simple binding spell won't be enough to stop chosen warriors like them. Despite their bravado, the knights begin to struggle as they realize the magical pressure is far more than a tickle. The mercenaries are forced to their knees as the intensity of the gravity magic increases, leaving them in shock. Elizabeth maintains a merciless expression as she exerts her power, proving that the knights' resistance is futile. With a final surge of magic, the knights are overwhelmed and let out an agonized scream as they are crushed into the dirt. The ground cracks and sinks under the immense pressure, leaving the invincible knights completely defeated and wailing. Stunned by the swift destruction of her warriors, Marianne watches in horror as her primary defense evaporates. Reyes remarks on Elizabeth's utter lack of mercy while the rival stands trembling and in fear. Elizabeth stands triumphant, declaring with a heated blush that Prince Lux is nothing more than her sworn enemy. Reyes and the cat share a look of weary resignation, acknowledging that Elizabeth's complicated feelings are certainly true. She continues her rant, claiming the prince constantly harasses her despite the frequent thrashings she gives him. Marianne fires back, calling Elizabeth's claim a bald-faced lie and insisting that no girl could truly hate Prince Lux. The rival argues that even if a girl initially hated him, they would eventually fall for his hidden kindness. With a blushing face and a final dramatic gesture, Marianne confesses that she knows this is true because she was one of those girls. Marianne stands her ground, questioning if Elizabeth has truly become her enemy. Despite the pressure to back down, Marianne stubbornly refuses to yield as she wonders what changed Elizabeth in this world. With a determined shout, Marianne brandishes her ultimate weapon, a glowing circular pendant. The talking cat reacts in pure shock as Marianne prepares to unleash the stellar staff, the divine punisher of demons. Releasing the weapon with a taunt, Marianne targets Elizabeth's weakness to light element magic. Invoking the power of an element as rare as darkness, Marianne commands the staff to awaken in a blinding flash. The stellar staff fully materializes in Marianne's hands, surging with immense celestial energy. Elizabeth and her companions watch in horror, realizing the staff is the strongest light element weapon in existence. The narrative reveals that this pivotal weapon was once the key to defeating the supreme demon Lord Elizabeth in the original game. Imbued with the power of past saints, the staff is a legendary artifact typically earned through trials in the demon realm. Sensing the devastating power being released, the cat frantically screams for Elizabeth to bolster her defenses. Marianne shouts, "Luminate," as a catastrophic wave of light erupts from the staff. The sheer force of the holy blast shatters Elizabeth's defense, leaving her vulnerable and overwhelmed. A brief silence follows the explosion as the dust begins to settle around the battlefield. Elizabeth is sent flying through the air, disappearing into a distant blur following the massive impact. The impact leaves a massive crater in the side of a cliff, with Elizabeth's silhouette buried deep within the rock. A secondary explosion rocks the forest as the residual light energy detonates against the mountain. Emerging from the wreckage, Elizabeth groans in pain, feeling the true sting of the holy attack. A massive trench has been carved into the earth, showing the terrifying path of the light blast. Marianne stands victorious in the distance while Elizabeth's allies look on in stunned disbelief. Breathing heavily, Marianne mockingly asks if Lady Elizabeth has finally learned her lesson. Elizabeth smiles amidst her tattered clothing, admitting that she could indeed use some more training. Confused by the sudden voice, Marianne realizes Princess Slaughter is no longer at the blast site. Elizabeth reappears high above the crags, noting that intense light is the mortal enemy of healthy skin. Floating in a shroud of dark energy, Elizabeth gazes down at her opponent from the sky. Fixing her gaze on Marianne, Elizabeth vows to make sure she can dodge such an attack with ease next time. Her young maid cheers from below, claiming Elizabeth looks exactly like a true demon lord with that dramatic entrance. Marianne is left speechless and trembling as she realizes her ultimate attack did virtually no damage. Elizabeth inspects her severely damaged outfit, worrying that her maid will be very cross with her tonight. A comical memory surfaces of a 6-year-old Elizabeth being spanked by her weepy maid for doing something dangerous. Elizabeth descends from the sky, her cape tattered but her presence more menacing than ever. Shadows loom large as Elizabeth prepares to escalate the conflict. Descending with a heavy thud, Elizabeth lands near her companions while Marianne prepares for a counterattack. Marianne tries to recharge the staff, but Elizabeth smiles and decides it is time to return the favor. Elizabeth lunges forward with incredible speed, promising to give Marianne a little spanking of her own. Marianne squeaks in terror as she finds herself completely defenseless against the approaching threat. The stellar staff begins to malfunction, detecting demon lord-grade dark magic and advising a divine punishment it cannot execute. Failing to find a compatible saint to wield its power, the weapon activates its internal self-destruct mechanism. A massive sphere of unstable energy surrounds the staff as symbols of light begin to crack and fail. Marianne panics, screaming as the weapon in her hands begins to vibrate and glow out of control. Cracks spread across the artifact as Marianne desperately asks what is happening to the staff. The staff emits a high-pitched whir before a violent boom signals the start of the explosion. Elizabeth's allies scramble for cover as the staff goes completely haywire, releasing chaotic energy. The cat explains that the staff responded to Elizabeth's dark magic by launching a final, suicidal counterattack. Warning that the staff will use all its remaining power to self-destruct, the cat urges Elizabeth to stop it. Elizabeth reacts in comical horror as she learns this explosion will be 10 times stronger than the previous one. Dismissing the danger, Elizabeth declares that a few insolent staves are nothing as long as one has good health. A massive blast erupts, sending shockwaves through the area as Marianne cries out for help. Elizabeth scolds Marianne for trying to take shortcuts with convenient tools instead of relying on physical strength. Elizabeth reaches into the heart of the light, her hand glowing as she seizes the runaway energy. With a casual toss, Elizabeth mocks the weapon and reinforces that one should only rely on their own health. Elizabeth delivers a devastating physical blow, vowing to smash the weapon into pieces. The physical strike connects with a wham, completely overwhelming the magical artifact. The stellar staff snaps and creaks under the pressure before finally shattering into useless fragments. A final flash of light envelopes Marianne as she watches her ultimate weapon get pulverized. The resulting explosion towers over the landscape, leaving Marianne squealing in the aftermath. Elizabeth retreats from the light, complaining about how much she hates the burning sensation of holy energy. Marianne gasps for air, finally realizing the sheer gap in power between her and the demon lord. In the aftermath, a voice calls out to check if a girl named Karen is okay. Waking up dazed and confused, the girl groans as she wonders exactly where she has ended up. Marianne questions why they are in this place as she begins to stir, noticing a strange shift in her surroundings. While catching her breath, Marianne urgently demands to know the current location of Lady Marianne. Elizabeth admits her utter defeat to Karen, who is shocked by the battered state of Elizabeth's clothes. A silhouette of Karen stands alone, reflecting on the immediate aftermath of the battle. Distant figures stand across a desolate landscape as a sharp scuffing sound breaks the silence. Formally accepting her defeat, Elizabeth announces she is giving up on Prince Lux's transfer while warning the men not to look at her disheveled state. Elizabeth pauses with a stern look, indicating that her concession is not the end of the matter. With a dramatic flair, Elizabeth declares that the real battle for the position of first wife has only just begun. Despite the duel's outcome, Elizabeth permits Marianne to be Lux's other wife, leaving the group in a state of confused disbelief. Amidst the chaos, Elizabeth stubbornly insists that she and Marianne will both do their best to support Prince Lux as his wives. Lux stands wounded but firm, protecting Marianne as a powerful gust of wind sweeps over the battlefield. A wide staircase leads up to a grand entrance as the wind continues to howl through the desolate area. High heels clack rhythmically against the stone steps as a voice demands an end to a foolish coup d'etat. Emerging with a glass of wine, a confident woman commands Marianne to give up and surrender. Identifying herself as Marianne of House Ducart, the woman firmly refuses Prince Lux's demands. Marianne drinks from her glass, claiming she would rather die than live in shame as a prisoner while her body begins to wobble. Marianne collapses to the ground as a glass of wine spills beside her, prompting a shocked cry from the onlookers. The narrator recalls that in the original game scenario this was the moment of Marianne's revolt and tragic demise. Known for her iron will and heart of ice, the villainess, Marianne was a fan favorite who died with her pride intact. In the present, the footsteps of a running girl interrupt the heavy atmosphere. Breaking the tension, a cheerful girl rushes forward and enthusiastically shouts for her big sister. The newcomer apologizes for being late and wishes her beloved big sister a lovely day, much to the confusion of the group. Claiming they are basically sisters now because they are both Lux's wives, the girl ignores Elizabeth's frantic objections. The girl recalls how her heart was moved when she saw Elizabeth protect her from an explosion during yesterday's battle. With stars in her eyes and a fluttering heart, she realizes that Elizabeth is the one she has always wanted as a big sister. As the girl clings to a flustered Elizabeth, the black cat watches the hilariously dorky scene unfold with a judgmental growl. The cat struggles to hold back laughter at the sight of the elite Lady Elizabeth being completely overwhelmed by her new sister. Marianne demands that the girl stop addressing her so formally in private, insisting on being called simply by her name. Elizabeth presents a small box, asking if the item she requested is inside. Marianne hands over the remnants of the stellar staff, noting that it is now a useless piece of junk without any magic. With a wink and a heart, the cheerful girl waves goodbye to her big sister as she departs. Elizabeth lets out a long phew of relief as a chime signals the end of the exhausting encounter. While Elizabeth wants to go home and sleep, her companion insists they must take the staff to the headmaster's office immediately. Elizabeth is dragged away against her will, fruitlessly arguing that they could just finish the task tomorrow. The narrator observes that lilies seem to be blooming everywhere in this strange new trajectory of the story. Though the plot is now completely out of whack, the narrator notes that Karen has become unusually clingy today. Worry mounts over the destruction of the stellar staff, a key item required to seal away the demon lord and clear the game. Panic sets in as the characters realize the serious consequences of losing the staff and wonder what will happen to the world now. A heavy door clanks open as a voice notes that everyone has finally arrived. The group stands before the grand doors of the office as a mysterious light emanates from within. Reyes finds the geezer's voice rude as the unseen man praises them for bringing their weapons as requested. Confused by the cryptic instructions, the group demands an explanation for why they would need weapons in a meeting. With a chuckle, the man opens a magical gate and tells them they will understand everything once they arrive. The group is suddenly transported to a dark, snowy forest, leaving them stumbling and disoriented. Elizabeth and her companions stare in shock as they realize they are no longer at the academy. Panic rises as they realize it is suddenly nighttime and demand to know how they were moved across space and time. A sighing voice tells them not to make a fuss, admitting to having fiddled with space and time a bit. A mysterious woman named Undine, the keeper of the Lost Woods, introduces herself while lounging on a giant staff. Undine, revealed to be a mysterious beauty, announces that she will be putting the group to a little test. With a swoosh of magic, Undine floats the broken stellar staff out of the box to inspect its radiating light. Undine complains tearfully that fixing the shattered staff is going to be a total pain for her. With a flash of resolve, the lazy sage declares her life motto is to do what she likes and never work a single day. A massive surge of magical pressure causes the ground to rumble as Undine prepares to make someone pay. The criminal who destroyed the staff is threatened with a heavy price as magical energy booms around the forest. Undine laments the troublesome job shoved onto her while her power continues to manifest in massive black script. Reyes and his companion tremble under the immense pressure, realizing Undine's magic is on the same level as the headmaster's. Panicking, the girl shouts that Lady Elizabeth didn't mean any harm and only broke the staff to protect everyone. Elizabeth ponders silently to herself that she probably did mean harm when she smashed the staff out of pure irritation. Undine points a finger directly at the group and thunderously declares them guilty. A sudden poof of smoke leaves the group crying out in shock as Elizabeth vanishes or transforms. Amidst a mysterious forest clearing, a magical flash erupts as Lady Elizabeth is suddenly struck by a high-level transformation spell. The party watches in utter disbelief as a massive explosion of energy consumes the area where Elizabeth once stood. To their horror, the group realizes Elizabeth has been transformed into a small stuffed toy, a feat of legendary-level magic according to the shocked onlookers. Hovering above, the great sage Undine coldly explains that the girl is still alive, as the transformation is intended as a lingering punishment for her use of dark magic. Far from being defeated, the tiny stuffed Elizabeth radiates a fierce aura, mocking the spell as nothing special while her eyes glow with intense power. Recalling the words of a lich she once fought, Elizabeth explains that this transformation is merely a type of curse that can be broken. A flashback reveals a skeletal lich laughing that a curse is like an intricate wire puzzle that no one can solve without knowing its internal secrets. Dismissing the complex magic as a mere parlor trick, the stuffed toy begins to crackle with energy, shocking the spectral memory of the lich with her display of raw force. With a mighty effort, Elizabeth uses sheer brute force to physically rupture the magical restraint from the inside out. The explosion of energy leaves the onlookers stunned and gasping as the transformation is violently undone in a breezy swirl of power. The witch Undine quickly uses her cloak to cover the boy's eyes as Elizabeth returns to her human form, warning that there will be no mercy for such exhibitionism next time. Undine chides Elizabeth for always relying on raw power to burst through restraints, identifying this lack of finesse as her primary weakness. The sage continues her lecture, noting that if Elizabeth could learn to restrain her power, she could have stopped the previous threat without destroying the staff. Turning her attention to Karen, the Saint of Light, Undine bluntly labels her the exact opposite of Elizabeth, far too weak. Undine manifests a shattered holy staff wrapped in vines, which begins to float and creak with ancient energy. The sage reveals this is the holy staff of the goddess, a divine weapon created to save humanity from the demon lord that Karen currently cannot properly wield. Undine offers Karen the chance to become a true partner to the weapon that has fought the demon lord countless times in the past. She encourages the girl to imagine the possibilities of no longer needing protection and instead fighting alongside her friends with the ultimate staff. With a final, piercing look, the great sage asks Karen the ultimate question: does she truly desire the power to change her fate? Without a moment of hesitation, Karen declares her desire for power with a resounding yes. The scene shifts to the stuffed toy Elizabeth looking on with a blank, silent expression as the training preparations begin. They arrive at the Lost Woods, a dangerous training ground specifically designed for the Saint and the Four Knights. Acting as one of the 7 great sages, Undine prepares to carry out the task assigned to her by Zandalf. Undine explains that the woods are actually a field-type dungeon where she serves as the dungeon master. Summoning a variety of monsters, the sage prepares to manage the encounter to provide the most suitable training levels for the group. To determine the challenge, Undine casually rolls a set of dice to see which monsters the party will face. The dice land on a 16, settling the fate of their first combat encounter. A massive medium-sized forest troll emerges from the shadows, designated as monster number 16. While Undine wonders if the troll might be too strong, the stuffed Elizabeth and the black cat cheer Karen on with tiny flags. Undine lazily concludes that she can just heal them if they don't die instantly, showing a complete lack of seriousness toward the danger. Reyes the Flame Knight and the third prince take their positions, readying their weapons as the troll approaches. Acting as the temporary leader, Reyes laughs off the threat, calling the troll nothing more than a big, dumb monster. Reyes demands the third prince watch his mouth and asks if he can even block a single attack from the beast. Karen nervously asks to just be called by her name as the knights bicker over titles and hierarchy. Reyes orders Karen to boost the prince's defense with everything she has so he won't be squashed by the troll's club. Channeling her magic through her staff, Karen unleashes a miraculous light holy spell that bathes the battlefield in a brilliant beam. The prince feels Karen's warm power spreading over him, finding the sensation absolutely marvelous. In his delusion, the prince assumes this magical power is a manifestation of Karen's love for him, much to her immediate annoyance. Karen bluntly informs the prince that she harbors no love for him whatsoever and begs him to focus on the giant monster in front of him. The troll swings its massive spiked club, letting out a roar as it connects with a heavy hawk against the prince's shield. Straining under the weight of the blow, the prince continues to credit his endurance to the power of Karen's love, while she shouts her denial. Reyes praises the lecherous prince for holding the line, telling him to bear the weight just a little longer. Seeing his opening, Reyes leaps into action, swearing to finish the fight with his next move. With a single, brutal slash, Reyes cleaves through the troll, sending a massive spray of dark blood across the clearing. Reyes boasts that he can take out such a slowpoke in a single strike, as the troll's body hits the ground with a heavy thud. The Flame Knight strikes a cool pose and smirks, fully aware of his own prowess in the aftermath of the kill. The prince is outraged at having to play second fiddle while Reyes looks cool, though the black cat mocks him for his earlier, hung grunts. Despite the bickering, the narrating voices note that the prince was brave to face a troll strong enough to defeat 10 regular soldiers. However, the conversation shifts to a more serious problem regarding the Saint of the End. Stuffed Elizabeth asks if there is a problem with Karen, the girl the church believes to be the prophesied saint. Undine recalls the prophecy of the goddess of stars, foretelling a maiden awakened to light who shall be the saint of the end. This predestined maiden is the one who is meant to finally bring about the total destruction of the demon lord. The church firmly believes Karen is this legendary figure, a prophecy passed down from ancient times. If true, she would be the strongest saint in history, capable of destroying the demon lord rather than just sealing him away. Despite the church's faith, Undine reveals that the 7 great sages have judged Karen to be nothing special compared to past saints. The stuffed Elizabeth scoffs at this assessment, suggesting the 7 great sages need to have their eyes checked. The training takes a dark turn as a group of towering, hooded evil spirits suddenly surround the party. The ghosts loom over the knights, their spectral forms filling the forest with a sense of dread. Reyes realizes with a curse that their swords are useless against these evil spirits, putting the group in immediate peril. Stepping forward with quiet confidence, Karen prepares to handle the spirits herself, surprising Reyes with her resolve. Karen confidently reconstructs a high-level spell structure she observed just once, channeling magic through her staff to mimic her senior disciple's power. The sheer force of the technique shocks those watching, as Karen recalls the devastating spell that previously shattered Lady Elizabeth's defenses. With a blinding flash of light, Karen's eye narrows in intense focus as the magic begins to manifest. A massive gleam erupts across the battlefield, causing onlookers to scream in terror as the area is engulfed in light. Karen stands at the center of the magical outburst, her expression fierce as the holy energy radiates from her forehead. Lady Elizabeth watches in disbelief as the rookie saint completely wipes out the entire group of enemies in a single strike. Undine watches the destruction with a smug, satisfied expression, seemingly pleased by the display of raw power. The enemies let out final agonized screams as their forms are disintegrated by the overwhelming holy light. Elizabeth remains frozen in shock atop her flying staff as the dust begins to settle around them. The magical winds continue to howl through the forest as the aftermath of the spell lingers in the air. Karen lets out a sigh of relief and twirls her staff after successfully completing the difficult incantation. Exhausted but happy, Karen smiles and admits that she only barely managed to pull off the complex maneuver. Undine's familiar gapes in total horror at Karen's humble assessment of her own terrifying power. The Black Cat realizes Karen's perception of barely managing is completely warped, considering she just unleashed a legendary level of destruction. Elizabeth remains wide-eyed and speechless, stunned by the realization of the talent she just witnessed. Narrated text reveals that the spell used, Luminate, was the ultimate creation of the legendary 3-star Saint Catalina. The history of the spell Luminate is emphasized as a legendary holy art used to slay hundreds of demons. Mr. Reyes immediately drops to the ground in a formal kowtow, frantically apologizing for ever underestimating Karen's genius. Elizabeth shudders as she finally recognizes Karen as a heaven-sent child of light, with potential beyond comprehension. The celebratory moment is suddenly interrupted by a sharp cracking sound coming from Karen's hand. To everyone's surprise, Karen's staff suddenly crumbles into pieces and falls to the ground. Karen wails in despair over her broken, starter staff, which apparently cost her a precious 20 silver coins. While Karen laments her lost investment and damaged clothes, she complains that she always loses control of her magic when using a staff. Mr. Reyes tries to console her by offering a job or even marriage, promising her 1,000 staves if she accepts his hand. The group continues to bicker in the background while Undine watches the chaotic scene with an amused sigh. Narrated thoughts explain that it was only natural for a cheap staff to overload and shatter when forced to channel such high-output magic. The importance of magic control is highlighted as the most basic skill for any practitioner. Elizabeth explains that a staff is like a faucet meant to regulate magic flow, but it will inevitably break if the pressure is too high. To help her disciple, Elizabeth tosses Karen a high-grade, divine floral staff, used only by senior clerics. Elizabeth warns Karen that the new staff is much harder to break, though it carries a staggering price tag of 200 gold coins. The expensive staff thucks into the ground as Elizabeth casually lends the precious artifact to the stunned rookie. Karen's jaw drops as she realizes the staff's value could buy a small house, but Elizabeth insists she stop practicing with cheap tools. Elizabeth floats serenely on her broom, preparing to reveal more about Karen's destiny. She explains that the stellar staff Karen is destined to inherit is a national treasure whose value far exceeds mere gold. Karen looks up in confusion, surprised to learn that she is already set to inherit such a legendary item. Elizabeth offers a sincere apology to Karen for ever doubting her qualities as a saint. Validating Karen's talent, Elizabeth declares her magnificent spell proves she is truly worthy of the stellar staff. Elizabeth tells Karen to hold her head high and officially congratulates her on her bright future. While the stellar staff is being repaired, Elizabeth instructs Karen to spend her time practicing magic control with the floral staff. As the dungeon master, Elizabeth activates a trial area and summons the Wolves of Darkness for the group to face. A menacing pair of eyes flashes in the darkness as the trial begins. Elizabeth announces that her hand-picked training partners are the 3 Wolfric brothers, dark element werewolves from the Camphor Tree Hill. The 3 werewolf brothers growl in the shadows, warned to be even stronger and more dangerous than trolls or wraiths. Elizabeth smirks as she guarantees they will survive the trial, though she wonders how many days it will actually take them to clear it. A boot thuds firmly onto the ground as the group prepares to charge into the woods. Reyes brags that they will clear the trial on the very first day, eager to test his sword against the wolves. Driven by a desire to impress the women, Reyes brandishes his shield and commands everyone to follow his magnificent lead. Karen looks up at Elizabeth with a determined smile as she clutches her new staff. Karen vows to do her absolute best so that one day she can stand as an equal by Lady Elizabeth's side. Undine remains silent, watching the group with her usual blank and mysterious expression. The group charges off into the dark forest with a determined shout as Elizabeth watches from a distance. Elizabeth turns to her cat companion and mentions that the saint will play a vital role against the dark element enemies. The black cat realizes Elizabeth has suddenly vanished into thin air, leaving it alone on the broom. The dense, silent trees of the Lost Woods stand tall as the trial gets underway. Deep in the woods, Elizabeth reappears and finds Undine hiding in the shadows, noting her incredibly strong presence. Undine admits that she also loves training and wants to do her best alongside Karen. A massive werewolf looms over Undine, but she remains unfazed, claiming she will make the beast her new training partner. Undine declares that her dedication to training is all for the sake of achieving even greater health. Narrated text explains that dungeons are mysterious, otherworldly proving grounds created by the gods or ancient civilizations. The chapter concludes by noting that dungeons are endless spawners of monsters where challengers find either glory or death. Standing before the venerable training grounds, Elizabeth prepares to face the absolute law of the dungeons. Looking down at her pint-sized form, Elizabeth realizes they are facing a massive werewolf standing 33 feet tall. With a defiant shout, the tiny stuffed version of Elizabeth leaps recklessly toward the towering beast. A frantic black cat screams for her to wait as she charges headlong into danger. Both the doll and the cat blur across the landscape at high speeds as the battle truly begins. Elizabeth casually greets the cat while it panics, demanding to know what she thinks she is doing in such a dangerous place. The narrative reveals that the giant werewolf is actually Alcarion, the dark wolf god. This terrifying creature is known as the legendary ruler of the Lost Woods. Alcarion sniffs the air and lets out a thunderous growl, confirming his status as the area boss. Elizabeth acknowledges the monster's overwhelming presence, noting it is exactly what she expected from the strongest creature she has detected. Despite the danger, a flash of determination crosses her face as she prepares to counter the beast. She reminds herself that she is the girl who has conquered countless bosses to achieve ultimate health, leaping back into the fray. Flying through the air, she boasts that regular foes no longer provide a challenge for her. The cat desperately reminds her that she is currently inhabiting the body of a vulnerable stuffed toy. Statistics appear showing Elizabeth in her stuffed form, possessing only cloth for defense. Realizing her predicament too late, Elizabeth curses as she continues her trajectory. The cat screams her name in horror as she is caught in a powerful gust of wind. Elizabeth flails her stuffed limbs wildly as she is tossed around by the shockwaves of the wolf's power. She tries to stabilize herself in midair as she tumbles through the sky. The giant werewolf Alcarion delivers a devastating hawk that sends shockwaves through the forest. An explosion of dust and debris fills the air where the impact occurred. Elizabeth lets out a high-pitched eep as she is slammed toward the ground with a massive thud. A massive boom echoes through the woods while the cat is sent flying into the distance. Emerging from the crater, a bruised Elizabeth wriggles in pain and admits she was almost pulverized by that hit. Suddenly, numerous dark, bladed tentacles erupt from Elizabeth's small body, writhing with demonic energy. A flash of light fills her eyes as she wonders when the last time was that she actually felt her life was in true danger. The black cat stares in absolute shock at the wriggling mass of tentacles, screaming to know what they are. Elizabeth explains that these appendages popped out of nowhere after she was almost crushed into the ground, allowing her to counterattack with her stick. The system announces that Elizabeth's survival instincts have awakened the power of the Supreme Demon Lord, manifesting as those terrifying tentacles. Though she finds the tentacles gross, Elizabeth decides they are better than being naked but realizes she still needs a proper stick. She clarifies to the confused cat that she specifically needs a staff to balance out her new power. Elizabeth flops around on the ground, obsessed with finding an object that can serve as her legendary weapon. She recalls that her companion Karen will eventually obtain a legendary staff and feels she must have one to stand by her side. The giant wolf god Alcarion growls and prepares for another assault as Elizabeth's tentacles continue to lash out. Elizabeth realizes she needs a durable, staff-shaped object that can withstand the intensity of her dark magic. A powerful fu of energy radiates from her as she eyes the wolf's features. With a sinister giggle, Elizabeth admires the wolf's horn and decides it would make a perfect replacement for her stick. The scene shifts to the Forest of Trials where Reyes delivers a powerful slash to a werewolf while shouting for it to die. Karen watches as the werewolves begin to sprout dark smoke and regenerate their wounds. Reyes and Karen are frustrated to see the beasts regenerating, wondering if these monsters are actually immortal. Gripping her staff, Karen explains that she sensed healing magic flowing between the creatures, meaning they must defeat all three simultaneously. Reyes agrees to the plan but questions how they will catch such fast-moving targets. With a confident smirk, Reyes tells Karen to leave the positioning to him. Reyes activates an earth spell called Mire, causing the ground beneath the wolves to churn. The werewolves let out startled cries as they begin to sink into the magically softened earth. Reyes immediately follows up by commanding the ground to harden, trapping the beasts in place. He warns that the spell will only hold them for a moment, urging Karen to take the shot now. Karen prepares her magic as Reyes gives the final signal to strike. With a determined look, Karen unleashes her ultimate light spell, Luminate. The battlefield is consumed by a series of thwacks and sizzles as the trapped werewolves are blasted by the holy light. A massive pillar of light erupts toward the moon as the party stands victorious over the forest. A mysterious woman in a witch's hat congratulates them for clearing level 1 of the Lost Woods trials. She reveals that the area bosses they just defeated were the 3 Wolfric brothers, praising their impressive first-try teamwork. The narrator highlights Reyes as a strong attacker who excels at solo combat and acting as a mobile decoy. Reyes is also dubbed the Earth Prince, for his vital role in protecting the saint and binding enemies with bogs. The aftermath shows a field of defeated enemies, proving that the saint's attack is capable of blowing away entire groups at once. The woman notes that Karen's tactics are super effective against dark element enemies, even if she blew part of the forest apart in the process. She jokingly asks them to keep the deforestation to a minimum since she has to fix the magical trees later. Reyes laughs and compliments Karen on her nice luminate as she looks back at him. Reyes offers to give Karen the nickname Shining Princess of Slaughter, which prompts her to shake her head in frantic refusal. Feeling the immense stability of her new equipment, the young mage realizes that pouring her magic into the divine floral staff is far more efficient than her previous weapon. Gazing at the 200 gold coin investment, she acknowledges the sheer power radiating from the floral-themed staff as she begins her journey. Her companion suggests that if she possessed the legendary stellar staff, she could truly embody the nickname God of Destruction through maximum magical output. Rebuking the idea immediately, she insists that she has no desire to cause widespread ruin and refuses to pursue such a destructive path. Modestly dismissing the grand title of God, she claims she is unworthy of such a status while her group traverses the snowy landscape. Just as she suggests the title would be better suited for Lady Elizabeth, a massive magical explosion rocks the horizon with a deafening "keem." The sudden shockwave and blinding light catch the group off guard, signaling a massive release of energy nearby. A roaring sound fills the air as the magical discharge intensifies, creating a chaotic vortex of power. High above the forest, a small, dark figure with a floral hairpiece floats amidst the clouds. Shock and disbelief wash over the mage's face as she witnesses the unexpected spectacle unfolding before her. Deep in the woods, a stuffed toy version of Elizabeth giggles to herself, realizing her training is progressing perfectly and she has discovered a new way to use this form. Watching the chaos from above, a companion pleads with Elizabeth not to destroy the forest, fearing the massive cleanup work that will follow her whoosh of power. A sharp whistling sound cuts through the air as another magical projectile is launched into the treeline. A massive, shadowy werewolf monster lunges forward with a terrifying roar, its claws ready to shred anything in its path. The beast goes on a rampage, tearing through the environment and letting out a pained rag as it collides with unseen forces. Elizabeth, in her tiny stuffed form, leaps into the air and unleashes multiple dark, writhing magical tendrils to ensnare the howling beast. With a swift "hstubbage," the stuffed toy dodges a lethal strike, moving with a speed that defies her plush appearance. A translucent, ethereal image of the real Elizabeth appears behind the toy, guiding its movements with a graceful, flowing motion. A massive "pow" echoes through the woods as the werewolf is sent reeling by an invisible, concentrated blast of magical energy. A group of knights watches in horror as a thundering "thee" shakes the ground beneath their feet. Terrified by the wriggling magical tentacles, the onlookers are amazed to see the massive monster sent flying by what they recognize as Lady Elizabeth's signature magic. The mage confirms with absolute certainty that the incredible power on display belongs to Lady Elizabeth. Despite the monster's ferocious growling, the observers are baffled because Elizabeth shouldn't be able to fight at all while in her stuffed toy form. Floating gracefully through the air, the stuffed Elizabeth chuckles to herself, confident that she is finally getting the hang of her new combat style. The tiny toy explains to a black cat companion that she no longer relies on simple wabam explosions, but has pioneered a sophisticated new method of magic. She describes her new philosophy as being like a willow tree withstanding a storm or the natural flow of a river. Instead of meeting the enemy's brute strength with her own explosive power, she prepares to redirect the force of the beast's attack. The werewolf charges again with a whoosh, but Elizabeth remains calm and poised for the countermove. With a gentle smack, she places her hand on the monster's massive arm, effortlessly guiding its momentum elsewhere. Refusing to fight against the raging current of the beast's attack, the ethereal Elizabeth begins a fluid, circular motion. With a powerful bim, she takes complete control of the monster's energy and sends it spiraling back toward its source. The black cat is left speechless, stunned by the display of soft power, successfully overcoming absolute brute force. Elizabeth explains that this style is the Chinese version of radio exercises, where movements flow together without any pauses. She names her new redirection technique, which uses an opponent's own strength against them, after the martial arts style she saw in her previous life. Striking a traditional martial arts pose, the ethereal form officially dubs the technique Tai Chi mode, while the monster is driven into the ground with a thunk. A final FWO of energy dissipates as the monster is completely neutralized by the flowing combat style. A loud crack resonates as the force of the impact shatters the rocky ground beneath the defeated creature. The battle ends with a heavy THWMP as the dust begins to settle over the clearing. The knights stand in the wake of the whoosh, processing the sheer absurdity of the victory they just witnessed. In her stuffed form, Elizabeth offers a prayer for the defeated monster as it dissolves into magical particles. The knights agree that this level of power is completely nuts, noting that Elizabeth has taken the phrase, "Don't worry about me," to a terrifying new extreme. Laughing at the absurdity, the companions realize that since it's Lady Elizabeth, even the impossible becomes a daily occurrence. High above, a mysterious figure on a staff watches the scene as the wind whooshes through the moonlit sky. One knight rages at the others, accusing them of totally underreacting to the fact that a stuffed toy just demolished a boss monster. He emphasizes that while the dungeon monster was used for training, it was still a powerful boss that shouldn't have been beaten so one-sidedly. He continues his rant, pointing out that Elizabeth's current form should be weak as hell, and literally less dangerous than a kitten. The knight wonders what kind of life Elizabeth must have led to develop such a terrifyingly iron will. With a sudden poof, the stuffed toy vanishes in a swirl of magical energy, leaving the witnesses staring in silence. Reverting to her human form, Elizabeth sighs with relief as a prophecy is recalled concerning a saint who will defeat the demon lord. A sage expresses doubt that the current saint of light, Karen, is enough to fulfill the prophecy, feeling that something vital is still missing. The sage wonders if there might be another saint destined to play a role in the world's salvation. The vision of a saint of darkness suggests that only when two saints work together will the world truly be saved. Transitioning to a new chapter titled Vacation Trip, the sun flares brightly over a tropical paradise. The sound of scuffing footsteps on sand signals the start of a much-needed break for the group. Multiple sets of footprints crisscross the beach as the characters race toward the shoreline. Bursting onto the beach with a joyful shout, the girls celebrate their arrival at the beautiful, blue sea. Under the bright early summer sun, the seagulls cry, "Kiao," as the waves gently lap against the shore. Karen marvels at the sparkling water, claiming she has never seen a sea so blue and beautiful in her entire life. The sheer radiance of the beach and Karen's excitement causes a comedic sparkle effect that overwhelms her companion. Elizabeth collapses face-first into the sand with a thunk, blinded by the sun and Karen's overwhelming, sparkly smile. Surprised by the sudden appearance of Lady Elizabeth, a skeptical black cat demands to know what she is doing. Overwhelmed by a sudden life-threatening situation, Elizabeth experiences her life flashing before her eyes as a crab scuttles past. A character bursts in with a loud bang, announcing they have heard all about the current situation. The scene shifts to a bustling outdoor cafe where several girls and a cat are gathered around a table. Marianne insists that she be called Big Sister, while the others offer her a polite, albeit confused, greeting. Karen twitches nervously as Marianne twirls around, offering a cheerful good day to her specifically. A close-up reveals a delicate, clock-like magical artifact held near a character's collar. The group examines the stellar staff, marveling at the fact that it has been completely fixed despite being in pieces before. It is explained that the artifact has actually been reborn into its original form as a seed. A serious tone is set as the character is told to listen well to the instructions regarding St. Karen. An exhausted woman yawns while explaining that the staff is designed to grow alongside its master as they fight together. Drowsy from the explanation, the woman decides she is going to go to bed. The girls realize they have exams to worry about and lament the lack of opportunities to actually practice fighting. To solve their problem, an invitation is extended to visit a family-owned dungeon near a beach villa once exams are over. While some are hesitant about imposing, the idea of exploring a fascinating dungeon remains tempting. Remembering a past mistake, a character admits that using a dangerous spell out of envy was simply wrong. The invitation to the villa is offered as a sincere apology for those past painful experiences. Hesitantly, she asks them to come along if it isn't too much of a hassle. Blushing, the daughter of the Duke confesses she values their friendship because it isn't based on political gain. She makes a final, desperate dash away while shouting for them to give her invitation serious consideration. The moment hangs in the air as the weight of the invitation sinks in. Acknowledging their similar desires for true friendship, the cat encourages them to give the offer some thought. The group eventually arrives at their destination via carriage, spotting a massive structure in the distance. A carriage rattles down a long road lined with trees toward a grand coastal estate. The small villa is revealed to be a massive, sprawling palatial estate that leaves the visitors stunned. Karen is shocked to find that the supposed villa is basically a giant castle. Lady Elizabeth is welcomed warmly, though she feels underdressed and worries about her lack of proper etiquette. Marianne cheerfully announces that they will be having a casual barbecue on the beach at noon. She reassures them that since the event is casual, there is no need for formal table manners. The bombshell is dropped that the dress code for the day will be swimsuits provided by the villa. Maids quickly usher the bewildered girls away to pick out the perfect swimsuits for the occasion. Marianne hopes the relaxed atmosphere will help Karen feel less nervous and allow them to enjoy themselves. When asked where she got the idea, Marianne credits her personal advisor and a local fortune teller. It is noted that the fortune teller has a reputation for being incredibly accurate with her predictions. A mysterious crystal ball sits in the center of the frame as the topic of the fortune teller continues. Questions arise about how a simple fortune teller obtained the stellar staff, which supposedly originated deep within the demon realm. Zandalf recalls that the mysterious woman correctly guessed a girl's love troubles before giving her the staff as a charm. The woman is described as a mysterious figure with tan skin and dark hair who hides her face behind a robe. As the search for the mysterious woman continues, the scene shifts back to the sunny coastline. A quiet moment occurs as someone steps onto the sandy shore. A realization strikes as the mysterious figure makes her presence known. The cloaked woman laughs to herself, boasting that the girl blinded by love is dancing right in the palm of her hand. A close-up of a skull-themed coin or medallion glints ominously in the sunlight. The narrative breaks to announce the official start of the bikini event. The cat breaks the fourth wall, telling the audience to ignore the logic of bikinis in a medieval setting and just enjoy the view. Excitement builds as the girls finally prepare to make their beach debut under the summer sun. A sense of embarrassment washes over the girls as they step out in their new attire. Karen and Elizabeth emerge in their swimsuits, though Elizabeth is so flustered she tries to run back inside. Both girls stand together on the beach, blushing and questioning why they were forced into this situation. The cat is absolutely delighted by the display, giving an enthusiastic thumbs up to the readers. The girls exchange compliments on how lovely they look, though Elizabeth remains a bit overwhelmed. It is pointed out that they are wearing matching swimsuits in different colors, signifying their close bond. Karen looks at her reflection, noting that her suit is different but admitting it is still quite cute. Marianne hugs Karen, declaring that they have a special relationship because they will be sisters in the future. The cat interrupts the moment to bluntly remind them that they aren't actually related and are just friends. Marianne mentions she is aware Prince Lux wants to marry Karen, which would technically make them sisters-in-law. She challenges Karen to prove she is worthy if she wishes to be one of the prince's wives. Despite the challenge, Marianne admits she finds Karen quite likable but won't give her any easy points. The scene winds down with a sense of anticipation for what comes next in their summer vacation. The final panel teases the growth of Prince Lux's harem as someone sneaks around in the background. While Karen desperately swears they won't join a harem, Marianne is left frozen in a state of utter shock. Trudging through the sand, the group wonders if the legendary lilies are actually blooming in this coastal area. Deeply embarrassed by the situation, the girls offer a frantic apology for the unfolding chaos. Members of Marianne's entourage, Melinda and Milet, appear visibly gloomy as they stand by the shore in their swimwear. Her attendants explain that while Lady Marianne is usually well-meaning, she is currently in her most troublesome and stubborn state. The entourage laments that Marianne has become a bunch of rusty gears, now that the idea of the girls becoming the prince's wives is stuck in her head. Deciding on a rougher approach, the suggestion is made to give her a good beating, much like hitting a broken machine to make it work again. Karen prepares to teach the blockheads a lesson the hard way, recalling similar difficult personalities she dealt with back at the Abbey. Tension rises as a low growl emanates from the group, signaling that patience has finally run out. While one girl warns against violence toward a duke's daughter, Karen fumes over being lectured about her relationship with Lady Elizabeth. Realizing a physical contest might be the only way to kickstart Marianne's rusty gears, the group considers a competitive challenge. They decide on a hunting contest, noting that Marianne is particularly skilled at gathering resources from the local dungeon. The girls learn that the entrance to this specific dungeon is hidden beneath the sea and only reveals itself during low tide. It is revealed that Marianne caught all the seafood for the barbecue there, though she failed to retrieve the highly coveted rainbow scallop due to monster guardians. Taking the information to heart, the girl squeezes her necklace and prepares to take matters into her own hands. Determined to resolve the issue immediately, she decides she will simply have to go and catch the scallop herself. Proclaiming that she will provide some assistance, she prepares to activate her magic right there on the shoreline. A massive, dark energy surges forward across the water with a powerful zwoom sound effect. Onlookers watch in confusion as the sea momentarily turns dark while a countdown begins. Reaching the climax of her count, the girl shouts, 3, as she unleashes her power. A colossal splash erupts as the water is violently displaced, revealing the hidden structures beneath. Proud of her impulsive display of power, she laughs and declares that there's no need to wait for a low tide when you're motivated. With the path cleared, she tells Karen that this is her absolute moment to shine. The massive skull-shaped entrance of the sea dungeon stands fully revealed, towering over the now dry seabed. The girls stand in absolute shock at the sight of the underwater dungeon suddenly exposed to the open air. Everyone is left reeling at the sheer insanity of the magical feat that just occurred. The beach is transformed as the water recedes, leaving the party standing on a vast expanse of wet sand. Despite the chaos, the girls share a light-hearted moment of gratitude, praising Lady Elizabeth for her incredible abilities. One girl is literally knocked off her feet by the shock while the others casually discuss their nutritional love for scallops. Frantic protests erupt about how a saint shouldn't be so impulsive or act on every whim so quickly. Despite the objections, the group decides that now is the perfect time to proceed. Clutching her staff, she vows to beat Marianne in the contest and then tell her loud and clear to stop being so intimate with Lady Elizabeth. A sharp gasp rings out as Lady Marianne is addressed directly amidst the crashing waves. Standing tall, she announces her intention to retrieve the rainbow scallop that Marianne was unable to catch for the barbecue. She issues a bold challenge, stating she has something important to say once the prize is finally in her possession. Marianne smirks at the challenge, realizing that a direct fight has just been picked with her. Accepting the duel, Marianne orders her equipment brought out for a one-on-one contest to see who gets the scallop first. Marianne raises the stakes, proposing that if she wins, she gets to spend the entire night discussing her favorite subject. To everyone's shock, Marianne's victory condition is spending all night telling them everything that's great about Prince Lux. Horrified by the terms, the girls immediately dash forward, refusing to accept such an exhausting victory prize. The Black Cat watches in utter disbelief, finding the rapid and unexpected developments too strange to even poke fun at. With a splash and a whoosh, the group finally enters the dark, yawning maw of the skull-shaped cave. Inside, the dungeon reveals itself to be a vast, bright dimension filled with water that mirrors the world outside. While the cat drools over the treasure trove of seafood, its instincts warn that the predators in here might view them as food as well. Dangerous aquatic monsters launch themselves from the water, proving that the dungeon's inhabitants are ready for a fight. Lady Marianne is spotted further in, already engaging a hostile group of flying sharks. Displaying her martial prowess, Marianne expertly skewers multiple flying sharks simultaneously with her swords. A maid team stands by to collect Marianne's kills while her competitors look on, irked by how well she is performing. Sensing a threat from behind, Marianne prepares to cast an ice spell as a massive shadow looms over her. With a confident smile, Marianne impales the giant beast on massive ice pillars that erupt from the ground. Boasting about being in top form, Marianne smugly asks Karen how she's holding up in the heat of the contest. Karen counters by casting a flash chain light spell, binding numerous fish in glowing shackles. Karen cheerfully explains she has put the fish to sleep with a lulling spell and asks if they are even edible. The scoreboard shows Karen leading with tasty mackerel, while Marianne has only caught not-so-tasty and poisonous flying sharks. Visibly shaking with gloom and frustration, Marianne acknowledges the competition is stiff but reminds everyone the real goal is the scallop. Karen maintains a smug, closed-eye smile while Marianne fumes, insisting that her sharks are actually quite edible and tasty. Determined not to lose, the competitors decide it's time to get truly serious about the hunt. With a loud shout, the girls charge deeper into the dungeon as water splashes around them. The high-energy overfishing contest continues as the hunt for the rainbow scallop intensifies. Activating her Saint Vision, Karen prepares to use another powerful light spell to dominate the area. Deep within the crystalline waters, a massive aquatic creature emerges with a powerful FOOM, signaling the start of the hunt. Bubbles rise and the water churns as the party prepares to engage their elusive underwater prey. Casting the high-level Saint Vision spell, the heroine projects an expansive light field across the seabed to detect all hidden lifeforms. Shocked by the scale of the magic, the Black Cat familiar marvels at the heroine's ability to easily maintain such a difficult detection spell over a vast area. Smirking with pride, the heroine rejoices in her new staff's incredible durability, finally relieved she can pour in maximum magic without it shattering. With a metallic cairn, she prepares to unleash the flash chain to lock down her targets. Chains erupt through the water with a violent FWO, snagging multiple fish and aquatic beasts simultaneously. Adoring her new weapon, the heroine beams with joy at how much money she will save now that she doesn't have to constantly replace broken equipment. As Elizabeth struggles with the weight of her gear, the heroine playfully suggests naming her new favorite staff, Health is Wealth. Marianne scoffs at the light magic display, stubbornly insisting that her own ice element is far more effective for actual underwater combat. Eager to prove her superiority, Marianne leaps into the air to begin her own icy assault. Declaring her ice magic as the ultimate weapon, Marianne prepares to freeze the very battlefield to ensure no prey can escape. Proclaiming herself the fairy on ice, Marianne boasts that her marvelous techniques will make short work of any monster in the depths. With a sharp essay, Marianne glides across the water's surface, leaving a trail of frost in her wake. Laughing triumphantly, she creates a frozen path across the water, effectively turning the entire lake into her personal icy runway. While the heroine cheers after catching a fish with her revised flash chain, bridge mode, the rest of the party navigates the floating chains. The group is stunned when they realize they have successfully landed a legendary cave devil bluefin tuna, a rare and delicious prize. Overjoyed by the catch, the heroine holds up the massive tuna while Lady Elizabeth looks on in utter disbelief. Marianne's frustration reaches a breaking point as she tears up, feeling completely overshadowed by the heroine's casual success. Ignoring the warnings that it is too risky to go alone, a frustrated Marianne splashes toward a distant iceberg to find a scallop on her own. Surprised by the sudden outburst, the heroine calls out for Marianne to wait while Elizabeth watches the scene with a tired gaze. Sighing at the display, Elizabeth laments Marianne's inability to be honest about her desire to simply join the group's fun. The cat familiar chuckles knowingly, explaining that Marianne is a classic tsundere, who finds it impossible to be sincere with the people she actually likes. Dismissing the behavior as a common character trope, the cat suggests that a little personality friction isn't such a bad thing once in a while. The party gathers at the edge of a massive cliff, looking down at a thunderous waterfall plunging into the abyss below. A deafening RMB roar echoes through the cavern as the sheer force of the falling water creates a massive mist-filled plunge pool. Arriving at the bottom, the girls look around in awe, wondering exactly what kind of dangerous place they have stumbled into. Marianne explains that this is the dungeon's boss room, the only place where the legendary rainbow scallop can be found. Warning the others, Marianne notes that the strongest monsters fight for dominance here, and the winner becomes the floor's boss. Challenging her companions to face their fears, Marianne leaps into the plunge pool, declaring that only those who dive in can claim the scallop. Smirking as she lands, Marianne tells the others to stay behind and quiver in their boots if they lack the courage to follow her lead. Marianne outlines the plan to plunder the dens and defeat whatever boss is currently guarding the treasure. Secretly hoping to impress her big sister, Marianne vows to use the others as her foils to make her own victory look even more impressive. The heroine fires back a warning, telling Marianne to stay out of her firing range so she doesn't accidentally burn her swimsuit with Illuminate spell. The two rivals stand at the base of the waterfall, ready to begin their search despite the tension between them. As Karen encourages the group, Elizabeth notes that the heroine seems more eager for a fight than usual lately. Marianne wades deeper into the shallow water, her sword and shield at the ready for a sudden ambush. Suddenly, Marianne freezes in terror as a slimy, massive tentacle brushes against her leg from beneath the surface. Recalling her grandfather's warnings, Marianne realizes with horror that the boss isn't the usual giant crab, but a monster that eats them. A series of rhythmic ZSH sounds erupt from a nearby underwater den, signaling that something massive is stirring. Sensing the danger with her staff, the heroine turns just in time to see the water begin to bulge upward. The water explodes in a violent splosh as Marianne screams a desperate warning for the others to watch out. Reacting to the sudden movement, the party members leap back as the unseen predator makes its move. Marianne's eyes widen in absolute shock as the massive scale of the underwater threat is finally revealed. A massive splash douses the heroine, who can only cry out in confusion as the water erupts around her. Marianne is suddenly hoisted into the air, her body entwined by thick, powerful tentacles as the beast emerges from the pool. The party watches in horror as a giant octopus, the dreaded Abyss Tentarian, captures Marianne and prepares to drag her under. Brandishing a massive axe, Melinda charges forward with a roar, determined to slice through the monster's limbs and rescue her companion. With a powerful "Isn't," Melinda cleaves through the tentacles, desperately trying to keep the monster at bay. Melinda tells the heroine to stay back to avoid being a liability, while the heroine tries to find an opening to help. Ignoring the danger to herself, Melinda continues her relentless assault, swearing that she will save Lady Marianne no matter what. The tentacles continue to wriggle and snap, narrowly missing Melinda as she maneuvers through the chaotic melee. Caught off guard by a second set of limbs, Melinda can only utter a confused, "huh," as more tentacles surround her. From the safety of the cliff, the remaining party members scream in terror as both their frontline fighters are nearly overwhelmed. The true size of the giant octopus becomes apparent as it towers over the shallow pool, dwarfing the adventurers. Elizabeth recognizes the beast from Marianne's grandfather's stories, identifying it as the legendary deep-sea terror, Abyss Tentarian. Trapped in the monster's grasp, Marianne realizes she can strangely still breathe, though the tentacles are uncomfortably tight. The heroine's staff begins to glue with a brilliant light, signaling that she is finally ready to unleash her true power. Observing the beast calmly, the heroine confirms its identity as an octopus and begins to channel a massive amount of light energy. Karen watches in awe as the heroine prepares a powerful defensive light spell, wondering just how much stronger her friend has truly become. To the saint's utter shock, Karen asks to be let down while Elizabeth begins charging a powerful magic attack. Ignoring the saint's desperate pleas to hurry, Elizabeth remains focused on gathering enough magic for her strike. As Elizabeth prepares her magic, massive tentacles suddenly emerge from the water and begin wriggling around her. Realizing the saint is also a target, the monster's tentacles lunge toward her as she screams in terror. Elizabeth calls out to the monster, taunting it with the threat of turning it into a snack for its insolence. A blinding flash erupts as Elizabeth prepares to unleash her power upon the wretched cephalopod. Suddenly, a dark magic intervention threatens to cancel out the saint's light magic, leaving everyone in a state of confusion. Frustrated and gritting her teeth, Elizabeth demands to know what she is supposed to do if her magic is being neutralized. The insolent monster grabs hold of her, but Elizabeth refuses to back down against the shaking beast. Determined to protect the girl she views as her future little sister, Elizabeth prepares a decisive counterstrike. With a sudden whoosh, Elizabeth demands the monster unhand its captive as she prepares to shunk the beast. The monster screams in agony as Elizabeth's intervention disrupts its hold and prepares for the final blow. Amidst the chaos and clanking chains, Elizabeth seizes the perfect opening to finish the fight. Seeing her chance, Elizabeth raises her staff high as a brilliant flash of light begins to consume the area. The area is flooded with light as Elizabeth executes her wide-reaching attack against the giant octopus. Karen uses magical chains to immobilize the beast, setting up Elizabeth for a clear and spectacular shot. Crying out, "Luminate," Elizabeth unleashes a massive boom that echoes across the battlefield. With a jubilant shout of "Takoyaki," a massive beam of energy connects with the captured monster. The sheer force of Elizabeth's attack sends shockwaves through the air as the monster is finally overcome. After the battle, Elizabeth smugly wonders aloud what their fresh catch is going to taste like. As the monster sizzles, Karen realizes with a blush that this isn't exactly how one traditionally makes takoyaki. Despite the unconventional method, the team begins dropping the fresh ingredients into the sizzler with a sharp clink. A flurry of clacking and clinking follows as multiple hands work quickly to prepare the feast. The official takoyaki party begins as the chef flips the perfectly round snacks over the heat. Elizabeth insists this is merely a personal matter of punishing an insolent octopus rather than an act of kindness. Maintaining her tsundere facade, Elizabeth stammers that she didn't actually want to make takoyaki for them. With a final tunk, a plate of perfectly glazed takoyaki is presented for everyone to enjoy. The scene transitions to a grand display as the group prepares to reveal even more culinary delights. On the beach, the group gathers around a massive platter as Elizabeth snaps her fingers to signal the reveal. The lid is lifted with a waft of steam, revealing a luxurious spread of roasted delicacies. Elizabeth proudly presents roasted rainbow scallops, the most prized and magical ingredients found in the dungeon. The group dig in with a satisfied munch, declaring the meal to be absolutely incredible. Karen and the saint squee with delight, praising Elizabeth for the crispy takoyaki and the magical flavor of the scallops. Elizabeth explains that the scallops are so flavorful because they grew up absorbing magic in the boss monster's habitat. She points out that possessing these scallops is legitimate proof that they successfully defeated the dungeon boss. Karen gasps as she suddenly remembers they were technically in the middle of a competition. Elizabeth smugly claims she knows exactly what Karen wants to tell her now that the competition has been won. Elizabeth assumes Karen wants her to finally accept Karen's love for Prince Lux. Karen immediately shouts that Elizabeth is completely wrong, catching everyone off guard. To Elizabeth's shock, Karen bluntly states that Prince Lux isn't even her type to begin with. Karen passionately explains that her real type is someone with a dark side who has the strength to stay kind, like Lady Elizabeth. A stunned silence falls over the group as Karen's accidental confession leaves everyone, especially Elizabeth, speechless. Karen suddenly realizes what she just said and begins to blush furiously while stammering for words. In a panicked clatter, Karen tries to explain herself while Elizabeth remains frozen in shock. The saint mumbles a quiet confession of her own, admitting that she loves Karen a lot too. Overwhelmed by the emotional revelations, both girls find themselves unable to look at each other. Karen suddenly zips away in a dash, shouting that she needs to go cool her head in the sea. The The saint cries out for Karen to wait and chases after her as steam practically hisses from their blushing faces. With a series of thunks, the girls continue their frantic run across the sand while their friends watch from a distance. Marianne stands on the beach looking completely bewildered by the chaotic exit of her two friends. Nearby, the other girls watch the scene unfold with a mix of surprise and realization. Marianne is struck with a sudden shock as she wonders if those two really don't care for Prince Lux at all. Her companions tearfully smile, noting that it took a while, but Marianne is finally catching on to the truth. The moon shines brightly over the quiet night as the sounds of the ocean fill the air. Waves crash against the shore with a steady rhythm as the evening festivities wind down. Marianne decides to take a quiet walk on her own to process everything that has happened. She reflects on the fact that Karen and Elizabeth are sharing a room in the Duke's villa tonight. Marianne giggles to herself, enjoying the sweet and favorite vibe that now permeates the group's relationships. However, she begins to worry if the world can handle the Demon Lord given how much the plot has departed from the original game. Spotting a figure in the distance, she wonders where Miss Marianne could be heading so late in the middle of the night. Marianne clutches her chest in distress, lamenting that she alone seems to be fretting over Prince Lux while others remain indifferent. Looking back at their overwhelming power, she acknowledges that defeating a dragon makes capturing rainbow scallops look like mere child's play for her companions. Her heart throbs with insecurity as she realizes they have only ever viewed her as a minor presence in their journey. The weight of her self-doubt peaks with the crushing thought that she is nothing more than an insignificant pebble by the side of the road. Standing alone on the shore, Marianne is suddenly startled by a dark, tattered figure looming behind her. A sinister fortune-teller from the academic district corners her, sneering that Marianne has finally realized her own worthlessness. As midnight approaches, a mechanical cat observes the scene from afar, curious about Marianne's late-night activities. The cat's internal sensors whir with intensity as it detects an even more pressing mystery unfolding nearby. Deploying a magic sensor, the cat picks up a faint trace of dark magic emanating from the middle of the sea. It ponders whether the dark magic was cleansed by sunlight during the day or if a hidden geyser is currently releasing it. Remembering game events, the observer notes that the Demon Lord's army typically gathers near dark magic geysers to build altars for archdemons. The situation grows increasingly concerning as the implications of the dark magic trace become clear. Shaking off the heavy thoughts, the cat decides a resort is no place for such worries and prioritizes the upcoming breakfast menu instead. A mysterious coin flips through the air with a sharp metallic ring as the dark figure prepares to act. The observer continues its search, wondering exactly where Marianne has disappeared to in the darkness. Marianne demands to know why the fortune-teller is trespassing near her family villa while the villain responds with a mocking laugh. The hooded figure lunges forward with a sudden, violent movement that catches Marianne completely off guard. Ignoring her questions, the fortune-teller offers to lend an ear to the insecurities weighing heavily on Marianne's mind. Under the influence of a mysterious power, Marianne finds her mouth moving on its own as she involuntarily confesses her desire to be like her companions. The villain cackles, explaining that dark spells are perfectly capable of inducing hypnosis to force out a victim's inner secrets. Grabbing Marianne, the demon praises her stupidity and high defensive capabilities for making her the perfect subject for investigation. Marianne gasps in horror as the name Elizabeth Maxwell is invoked during the sinister confrontation. The dark figure reveals that Marianne is intended to be the perfect vessel for Lady Fora, the archdemon of envy. Deep within an undersea dungeon, the mistress has apparently been waiting a long time to claim a perfect new body. The demon expresses shock that a human exists whose dark magic potential exceeds all expectations. A heavy, ominous atmosphere descends as the ritual begins to stir deep within the earth. The ground thumps with a rhythmic, heartbeat-like sound as the abyss opens further into the bowels of the earth. The demand for a new body echoes through the darkness with a terrifying intensity. A ghoulish metal clatters as the spirit inside screams for a vessel to inhabit. The fortune-teller explains that the archdemon metal is a gate linked to Fora's soul and must be pushed into the victim's heart. The takeover process begins, promising that the victim will be engulfed by an overwhelming cascade of magic and dye. Marianne lets out a final eek of terror as the dark ritual reaches its violent climax. The metal glows with a cursed light as it is held against her chest, pulsing with a rhythmic thumping sound. Bound in chains, Marianne screams in agony as the demon commands the metal to be carried directly into her heart. A massive rock suddenly hurtles through the air with a powerful whoosh, interrupting the ritual. The impact explodes with a loud "pow", sending the demon flying back and breaking the chains holding Marianne. A powerful figure descends from the sky, catching the falling Marianne as the demon is blasted away. The demon hits the ground with a thud, coughing in shock as their plans are violently derailed. The rescuer mocks the demon's familiar voice, noting that the villain seems much smaller than they remember. Standing tall and radiating power, the mysterious woman asks the demon exactly what they were doing to her friend. Marianne looks up through tears, her heart racing as she realizes she has been saved by someone she calls friend. In a flashback, a young Marianne declares her decision to become a saint to protect everyone in the kingdom. She enthusiastically announces her goal to join the church, unaware of the chaos her decision will cause. Her companions are left speechless and sweating at the sudden, dramatic declaration. When asked what prompted this, Marianne cites noblesse oblige and her duty to safeguard the happiness of the citizens. She boldly claims she is even willing to give up her status as a noble to achieve her dream of sainthood. Marianne sprints away to cut ties with her father immediately, leaving her frantic friends calling out after her. Her friends chase her, shouting that her delusions are getting out of hand while Marianne insists she must join the church. The voices of her companions echo in the darkness, desperately calling for Lady Marianne to stay. Back in the present, the rescuer holds the unconscious Marianne, begging her to say something if she can hear them. Realizing the danger, the companion prepares to cast a purification spell on Marianne immediately to stop the dark corruption. Marianne slowly wakes up, confused and calling out for her big sister, Elizabeth, as she regains consciousness. Disoriented, she looks around at the moonlight and asks where she is as the wind whistles around them. The atmosphere remains tense as the immediate danger of the ritual begins to fade into the night air. Her companion smiles with relief, saying, "Thank goodness," as Marianne wonders what just happened to her. The demon sneers from the shadows, warning Elizabeth Maxwell that she has truly done it this time. The villain begins to rise again, surrounded by a swirling aura of dark magic and sinister laughter. A dark transformation takes hold, accompanied by the sound of shifting magic and a menacing presence. Marianne's companions recoil in shock as the villain's true demonic appearance is finally revealed. The demon confirms Marianne's suspicion, laughing that an idiot girl with powerful magic actually helped her. Gritting her teeth, the demon complains that much of her body was recently whittled away, causing her physical form to creak and groan. The confrontation settles into a deadly silence as both sides prepare for the next stage of the battle. The scene opens with a title card displaying the text, Pui, and ZSH. A demon girl lets out a pained shriek as her body begins to crack under immense physical pressure. As the ground rumbles and creaks, the demon girl screams in agony while three figures watch from a high ledge above. Frustrated by the demon's tenacity, her attacker rumbles with effort, swearing that her dark element foes are always too sturdy to crush. A young woman explains the biology of their enemy, noting that a demon's body is fundamentally different because it consists of dark magic surrounding a core. She continues her lecture as the demon girl's body continues to splinter, stating that one must whittle away their magic or pulverize the core to destroy them. Determined to finish the job, the attacker releases her magic to enhance the ground, planning to sandwich the demon and grind her to dust. Suddenly, a heartbeat thumps and a puppet spell is cast, causing the attacker's power to weaken as a mysterious influence takes hold. Shocked and confused, the girls can only gasp in horror as a magical seal appears behind them and a rhythmic bedump echoes through the air. The heartbeat intensifies as the girl's eyes go wide, signaling that the possession or spell is reaching its peak. The demon girl laughs manically, thanking her opponents for bringing themselves exactly where she wanted them. The magical seal pulses with a final bedump as the demon commands her puppet to awaken. A terrifying skull-like image manifests within the seal, signaling the intent to take over the girl's physical form. Under the influence of the spell, the puppet is commanded to target Lady Marianne's heart and push the archdemon coin against it. The demon mocks this silly, foolish lady, who has become an easy-to-control puppet, while the coin begins to glow against her skin. With the possession nearly complete, the demon commands her new thrall to dance for me. The title of Chapter 48 appears as Phora, the archdemon of envy, fully exerts her influence through the glowing metal. The archdemon metal pulses with dark energy as it begins to sink into the girl's flesh. Lady Marianne experiences a violent jolt and gasps in confusion as the magical whoosh of the possession takes hold. In a blur of motion, one of the girls is grabbed and held tightly as the scene unfolds on the rocky peak. A final bump thumps as the demon girl watches the successful strike from the base of the mountain. The demon girl declares her victory, seeing that the archdemon metal is now firmly pressed against Elizabeth's heart. She explains that the metal is a spiritual gate linked to Lady Phora's soul, designed to turn the victim into a demon immediately. Lady Marianne is squeezed in a tight embrace while her companions look on with growing concern. Despite the sinister trap, the situation seems to stall as the transformation doesn't proceed as expected. Marianne's companions are baffled by her strange behavior, while the demon girl feels a sudden, ominous chill. The demon girl's face contorts in a scream of disbelief, demanding to know why the victim isn't being taken over. Marianne smiles serenely while holding her companion close, despite the archdemon metal vibrating and cricking against her chest. With a defiant humph, Marianne tells the demon that she would appreciate it if she didn't underestimate her. A bright flash emanates from Marianne's confident smile as she prepares to reveal her countermove. The demon is horrified to see that Marianne has manifested ice armor, blocking the puppet spell and the metal's influence. The sound of cracking ice fills the air as an ice spike protrudes from Marianne's leg. Marianne coolly explains that she only needed a little stimulant to wake herself up from the spell's influence. Marianne's leg throbs with pain from the ice spike, prompting her sister to apologize and call for immediate healing. Acting quickly, Marianne casts an ice spell to create a massive wall, separating her group from the demon girl. Her companions cry out in surprise as the massive frozen barrier rises between them. As her ice armor shatters and crumbles, Marianne warns her big sister to stay away from her. Marianne reveals that the metal is a gate intended for a high-ranking demon to invade her body and take control. She winces, describing the sensation of the invasion as being covered in foul-smelling sludge that is staining her very body. Grasping an ice dagger, Marianne declares that her pride cannot allow this filth to defile her big sister. Even if it costs her life, Marianne prepares to make a final sacrifice to stop the demon's advent. With a final, gentle laugh, she looks toward her sister one last time. In her final moments of self-control, she asks her sister to simply call her Marianne. Marianne raises the ice dagger high, preparing to strike her own chest to destroy the gate. A massive, dark shadow lunges forward as the girls cry out in a desperate attempt to stop the tragedy. A giant, shadowy beast lets out a chomp as it intervenes in the suicide attempt. The girls stand frozen in shock as the dark energy surges around them. A voice cackles that while this isn't the intended body, it is not bad and very excellent as dark energy bursts forth. As the shadow looms, the demon mocks Marianne for willingly trying to die for her pride, calling the suicide attempt a tragic waste. The entity sneers at the foolishness of inferior life forms and decides to inhabit the girl for a while as a reward. Fora, the great archdemon of envy, declares she has found a temporary vessel and has been revived. The dark beast looms over the battlefield as a voice commands the demon to get out of her. Chapter 49, titled Advent, begins as the demon girl adjusts her appearance with a sinister smile. The dark beast stands tall against the backdrop of a full moon as the wind whooshes across the landscape. The demon girl reveals a predatory grin, reveling in her new physical form. Laughing manically, the archdemon poses triumphantly upon her massive familiar. Cackling that she is bursting with energy, the demon notes that young girls make the best hosts for taking over. The girls are horrified by the takeover, realizing the true scale of the threat they now face. They recognize the foe as Fora the Envious, one of the 7 archdemons of the Demon Lord's army, and wonder why such a mid-boss is in an early game area. Fora mocks the girls as inferior vermin, and turns her attention toward the stellar staff. She identifies her opponent as the Saint, the only hope humanity has against the Demon Lord. With a malicious grin and a clenched fist, the archdemon prepares to crush the last hope of mankind. Elizabeth trembles as the demonic presence mocks her status as a mere fledgling in a most amusing display of arrogance. The archdemon focuses its gaze, identifying Elizabeth as another insignificant insect that must be crushed alongside the saint. Though faced with a powerful secret weapon, the demon laughs off the threat and prepares to strike. Elizabeth remains stoic and unmoved as the dark entity declares she is no match for its superior power. With a fierce command to shut her mouth, Elizabeth grips the dark energy and prepares to retaliate. The demon is momentarily confused as the surrounding shadows begin to wriggle and shift unexpectedly. Terror strikes the archdemon as its own limbs are suddenly bound by creaking, constricting restraints. Elizabeth's companions look on in absolute shock, wondering exactly when she managed to set such an intricate trap. The archdemon curses Elizabeth, calling her an insolent insect while desperately demanding to be released from the tightening grip. Elizabeth calmly assesses the situation, noting the difficulty of extracting the demon from Lady Marianne's stolen body. She decides to initiate Plan A, which involves a brutal and direct attempt to yank the entity out by force. The demon lets out a pathetic eep as Elizabeth prepares to reach straight into its gaping mouth. Ignoring the demon's frantic pleas to stop, Elizabeth continues to push forward with her aggressive extraction method. A massive shockwave erupts as the demon desperately tries to block the physical assault and stop the process. With a sudden zipping sound, the archdemon manages to slip away from the immediate physical confrontation. The entity sneers at Elizabeth, commending her for managing to break the initial restraints while vowing to stop toying with her. Floating high above the battlefield, the archdemon prepares to unleash its true, unbridled power. The demon stares down with empty, dark eyes, radiating a chilling and ominous aura. Unimpressed, Elizabeth smiles and declares she is barely getting started and hasn't even finished her warm-up exercises. The demon and its feline companion are left reeling, cursing the inferior pest for her continued lack of seriousness. The cat companion is left bewildered, questioning who the actual boss of this encounter is supposed to be. Elizabeth casually claims she is incredibly powerful and could easily crush the demon with just a single finger. She continues to belittle the entity, calling it a small-time demon that poses no real threat to her. With a terrifying glare, Elizabeth orders the demon to get out of the body immediately before she flattens it. Her aggressive front is revealed to be Plan B, an attempt to use sheer intimidation to chase the demon out of its host. The archdemon is momentarily taken aback by the overwhelming pressure Elizabeth is projecting. Elizabeth maintains her confident smirk, silently executing the next step of her strategic rescue mission. A dark wind howls around the demon as it begins to realize Elizabeth might be more than she seems. The demon quickly recovers and laughs, realizing Elizabeth's blatant bluff was far too obvious to be effective. Panic sets in for the companions as the demon decides to take the fight seriously and prepares a counterattack. The archdemon summons a massive, multi-headed shadow beast to prove how a real demon conducts foul play. A colossal clash occurs as the shadow beast strikes, sending debris flying and forcing Elizabeth back. The demon mocks Elizabeth for her failure to flatten it, pointing out that any further struggle will only hurt the host body. Elizabeth realizes the difficulty has spiked significantly since the demon is now using the saint as a human shield. Karen intervenes by offering a hand, preparing to cast a holy spell to assist the struggling Elizabeth. Karen unleashes a flash chain spell, specifically designed to target and bind only demonic entities. The chains slam into the demon with a heavy clang, pinning it midair and disrupting its dark flow. Elizabeth urges Karen to keep the demon pinned down so they can proceed with the final part of the plan. The demon's face splits into a horrific grin, mocking the bad-mannered saint for her naive attempt at containment. Dark lightning crackles across the holy chains as the archdemon prepares to punish the girls for their interference. A massive zap of energy erupts, shocking the girls and breaking the holy restraints with ease. Karen falls back in pain as her staff's emergency healing mode activates to counter the demon's devastating counterhit. The archdemon boasts about the vast gap between a god and vermin, identifying itself as an eminent millennium-old entity. It makes a special offer to Elizabeth, asking if she truly wants the girl's soul and body returned. The demon demands that Elizabeth remove all protection spells and let the dark magic engulf her as a trade. Elizabeth contemplates the word, devour, as the demon explains its intent to use her body as its next vessel. To the shock of everyone present, Elizabeth calmly agrees to the demon's terms. She asks the cat to look after the fallen Karen, ignoring Elizabeth's frantic warnings to wait a minute. The cat screams that it is way too risky for a muscle brain to engage in a battle of wits with an archdemon. Elizabeth acknowledges her reputation for being a tough cookie as she prepares for the soul-devouring process. She tells the cat not to worry, cryptically stating that this confrontation isn't actually about wits at all. Elizabeth reveals her secret weapon is her own low PD score, confidently declaring herself to be completely indigestible. Standing before the three massive shadow beasts, she boldly invites the demon to go ahead and eat her. The archdemon laughs at her resignation, ordering her to be grateful as the shadow beasts lunge forward. Light and shadow collide as the devouring process begins in a brilliant flash of energy. Elizabeth's soul or essence appears to float within a void, surrounded by the predatory demonic heads. The shadow beasts close in with a final chomp, seemingly consuming Elizabeth as she intended. The rhythmic bedump of a heartbeat echoes as the demon attempts to process Elizabeth's complex essence. Elizabeth's eyes sharpen with a predatory grin, announcing it is finally time for Plan C of the rescue mission.